you what Will Hardy had to say as he gets ready for his offseason and as the team is currently, I believe, conducting their locker room clean-out interviews. Then they'll send the players on their way and hopefully a good offseason so the Utah Jazz can at least show some promising signs next year that they're moving in the right direction. So, jam-packed show on this Tuesday afternoon. Will Hardy right out of the gates. NBA Daily Assist style, Tim McMahon after that. We'll talk some Jazz. We'll talk some mock draft. We'll talk some play-in. Stephen Curry will play tonight. He's got a banged-up right thumb, and Jimmy Butler has a right thigh contusion, but Jimmy is going to play tonight as well. How about a little golf with Easton Folster after history made at Augusta National last weekend by Rory McIlroy? Easton Folster, the director of the Utah Golf Association. I have a presentation, a bullet point presentation I prepared diligently for Easton today. The title of my presentation is #ShrinkTheGame. See if Easton's on board with that. My guess is he will not be. It's all about getting tee times. It's all about not playing 6-hour rounds. It's too popular now. So those of you that just got into it, find a new hobby, please. Does that mean? Is that rude? Should I welcome folks that are trying to learn how to golf?
I mean, I guess it depends where your priorities lie. If you just want an open course and, have it to yourself, then there's nothing wrong with it.
What's wrong with a good hike or a good bike ride? Why do you have to play golf?
I'm on your team.
Okay, good.
I haven't played 5 rounds in the last 5 years.
Okay.
So I'm with you.
So be more like Porter, play less golf and bike and look for weird birds and send out pictures on Instagram, right?
Weird birds? Come on, man. Now you're offending me.
Unique birds, rare birds.
There you go.
How about that?
Sometimes.
Plenty of hobbies out there for you. I don't know why golf has to be your thing, because it's my thing. Leave me alone. Let me play. So I'm going to present #ShrinkTheGame to Ethan Folster today. Ethan Folster, excuse me. My guess is he will probably summarily dismiss me, but Easton is also a Knicks fan, so we'll do some NBA. As the Utah Hockey Club gets ready to start their offseason, Belle Frazier, friend of the program and covers the hockey club for the Tribune, will stop by. And then the only man I know with 2 Pelotons and 2 Emmys is Dave Fox. Dave stops by today. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. We call it Talkin' Jazz. It's our final Talkin' Jazz of the season. And tonight we're leaning into the top 5 prospects of the NBA draft to get you ready for one of these young players that will come and play for the Utah Jazz this year. So Will Hardy, Tim McMahon, Ethan Folster. I don't know why I wrote down Ethan. His name is Easton. What the hell? Will Hardy, Tim McMahon, Easton Folster, Belle Frazier, Dave Fox, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, who is obviously misguided in sports and in life. Pineapple on pizza should not be allowed. You know, back east, they don't even allow that option. You cannot even order pineapple on pizza where I grew up. Are you aware of this?
Yep.
Okay.
My ancestors got out here out west to get away from the pizza bigots in the east.
Like Jesse James, your distant cousin. Isn't that who it was? The old gangster, the old Western cowboy. Who was it? Remind me.
Butch Cassidy.
Butch Cassidy, fan of pineapple on pizza?
Maybe. I don't know. He was rebelling from something.
All right. How's your Tuesday, pal?
It's gone well. It's gone well. How about you?
Good. Yeah, no complaints. Excited for the play-in, not the playoffs tonight. So we do have some NBA basketball after kind of a quiet night last night. All right, our first guest right out of the gates. Well, he's not a guest, but Will Hardy addressed the media yesterday. If you missed those comments, we're going to bring those to you. But before we get to Will, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, or assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets into basketball championship series, starting with a play-in round. So tonight, which is not the playoffs, we've been over it. Play-in round starts tonight. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take 2 ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the Ship. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. Download the Prize Picks app right now and use that promo code ESPN700. And when you make your first $5 bet, they're going to give you $50. Do not even need to win that bet to get to 50. It's on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks and run your game all season long. All right, NBA play-in tonight. Couple of NBA games, and then we're going to kind of be able to learn what the matchups will look like after the play-in is over. We get Atlanta and Orlando tonight, and then Memphis and Golden State is your late game. Now, of course, the Utah Jazz season has come to an end, and we look forward to the draft lottery coming up on May the 12th, where we'll learn where the Utah Jazz will draft. Now, as we've talked about, over the course of Utah Jazz history, they have never moved up in the lottery as far as having a little luck on their side. The only times they've moved up is via trade. They've never moved up when they've had the opportunity just to have ping pong balls bounce their way. As a result of a topsy-turvy final day in pro basketball, the Jazz did land on the worst record in the NBA, which means that they'll only fall to 5. If the worst possible luck manifests itself for the Jazz, they're going to draft at 5, okay? The hope is, of course, the Jazz, along with the Wizards, in addition to the Hornets, all have a 14% chance of winning that number 1 overall pick. And, of course, the prize this year, after what I call a gap year last year, and that ultimately is what last year was, because this year's rookie class was not great. Reece Shashay, the number 1 overall pick for Atlanta, had a decent second half of the season. I think Stephon Castle is probably going to be your rookie of the year, and he's good. I was kind of hoping he would fall to the Jazz, where Cody Williams did. But ultimately, this is the year where there is a prize worth doing what the Jazz just did. And you're going to hear from Will Hardy coming up in a little bit, Justin Zanuck yesterday. And I will continue to wonder just how all of this, this losing is landing with Will Hardy, and how much he is not that he's not invested in the process, but if you're a head coach, and that's why the incentive structure of rewarding losing in the NBA, to me, has to change. If you're Adam Silver, that has to be your number 1 priority. And there are several different options that you have at your disposal. I've talked about promotion relegation in the past before, something that when I was younger, I scoffed at as a European socialist thing in sports. And now that I'm more familiar with it, and I've actually seen the intensity of a soccer team fighting for their lives to stay in their league, I do think that would be a very intriguing solution. But we do live in a capitalist society, and I don't think any NBA owner would sign off on the prospect of his team playing among the G League teams next year. There is the infrastructure actually in place to get this done. But ultimately, I think the only way to do this is to figure out a way to change the draft process, whether it's a snake that just rotates every single year. There is not a perfect solution, but I can tell you this, what they have in place right now is just ass backwards. Because if you're Will Hardy, hell, if you're any of these players on the Jazz roster, if you're any of these players on the teams that just took the last month and a half or 2 months of the season off, Washington, Charlotte, New Orleans, Philly, Brooklyn, Toronto, even San Antonio after Wembanyama went down, a lot of these teams that just lost intentionally, it is completely counter to the way that you are trained and wired as a coach and a player. I mean, you didn't have to play college or pro basketball or football to remember what it was like when you were playing youth sports or high school sports. Like, you are bred to compete and do the best you can to win. And there are tremendous lessons that can be taken from losing. You have to handle both because it's also a microcosm of the way that life just unfolds. But this is year 3 of an unserious approach from an organization that, historically speaking, has bred a lot of success. Never a championship, but a lot of really good teams and a lot of really exciting seasons, and a lot of really exciting springtime playoff evenings in the building, in the Delta Center. It's one thing as the weather kind of warms up and as spring basketball is played around the landscape of the NBA. I miss it. I miss playoff basketball in Salt Lake. It is a buzz that is hard to explain. It's not just the game. It's the feel around the city. It's the excitement downtown, and it's the potential of what could be when the Jazz are good. And the problem is, the dirty little secret is, the Jazz are not Cooper Flag away from being good again. I think they're Cooper Flag away from being somewhat interesting. And I don't know how that would color the context of how they approach the offseason if they're able to grab the Cooper Flag prize of this lottery. What does that mean as far as what Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge want to accomplish this offseason? And the other thing that ends up happening, which is an exciting thing to think about, and for an example, we can look at San Antonio after they did the smart thing 3 years ago when Victor Wembanyama was available by trading DeJounte Murray, breaking their team down to the studs, sitting most of their better players just for the chance to get the next generation unicorn, which they did. So you grab Victor Wembanyama, and what happened the next offseason? Chris Paul is not 25 anymore, but I can promise you if the Spurs did not draft Victor Wembanyama, Chris Paul would not have looked at San Antonio. And then De'Aaron Fox, a really good young guard, when he decided that he did not want to play for Sacramento anymore, he lands in San Antonio to play with Wembanyama. They expedite the process with some veterans. They draft another good young rookie in Stephon Castle, who, quite frankly, is better than any of the first, second, or maybe even third-year players, due respect to Walker Kessler, on the Jazz roster. My point is, if the Jazz can get Cooper, and if on May 12th, Lady Luck actually shines on the Jazz for the first time, the other thing that would do is potentially open up the process for other players to want to play for the Jazz because they want to play with him. Now, of course, as I continue to remind everybody, Cooper Flagg reclassified and should have been a senior in high school this year. He turned 18 about 4 months ago. He is a kid. And the list of 18-year-olds to come into the NBA and make a massive difference right away is really short. It might be one. It might be LeBron. You know, Garnett was good as a rookie coming out of high school. And there's some other examples, Sean Kemp, Moses Malone. We don't have to have a NBA history lesson today. But to expect Cooper Flagg to land in Utah or Charlotte or Washington or anywhere right away and be like a 2010 first-year All-Star guy is probably not that realistic. But with all the intoxicating traits that he does have, if he can just show year one that he belongs somewhere, and the Jazz can show year one that he is surrounded by a good developmental coaching staff and a good organization that's going to do right by him, it will open up the doors for maybe some other possibilities that we're not seeing right now. Because the other thing the Jazz have done is they put themselves in a spot to capitalize on a team that is yard selling because they have a high payroll with talent that hasn't delivered. The obvious example right now is the Phoenix Suns. Matt Ishbia, like a lot of these young owners who achieve great success in other areas of commerce and think they can achieve the same success in the landscape of pro sports, obviously is over his skis. Will he figure it out at some point? Sure. Give him some time. It's the same thing I say about Ryan. I think Ryan is still learning how to do this. This is not Qualtrics. This is not a customer survey business. It's the NBA. It's different. And there aren't a lot of parallels, even though you try to make it that way because you achieved elsewhere. You got to learn how to do this. And so Phoenix, at this point, has the highest payroll in pro basketball, and they won 36 games this year. That's hell. That's if you want to know where no man's land is in the NBA, it's in Phoenix right now, okay? And there are other examples of teams that have to make decisions, and these teams, and we'll just use Phoenix because they're the best example for what I'm talking about right now. Phoenix does not control their draft until 2032. 7 years away until Phoenix controls their draft again because they used all their draft capital to get Durant from Brooklyn, to get Brad Beal from Washington, and make some other trades to try to surround the big three with some good pieces, and it hasn't worked. And Brad Beal has a no trade clause, and he's under contract for 2 more years at the dumbest number. So he's your Phoenix Sun. If you want to get this thing back on track, you're going to have to trade Kevin Durant, and you're going to have to trade Devin Booker, and the trade partner that Matt Ishbia is looking for is a team with clean books and a ton of draft capital. Am I going to sit here on Tuesday, April 15th and tell you Devin Booker is going to be playing for the Jazz next year? No, I'm not going to do that. But there are plenty of examples of teams that have to jettison superstar players because it hasn't worked. And the teams that are in the spot to grab that player, unless it's Luka, who just lands in Los Angeles, typically are teams with clean books and draft capital. So if you want to reset, if you want to go Kevin Costner in draft day and reset your draft war chest, you could do a lot worse than the Utah Jazz, okay? So, step one, draft lottery May 12th. If the Jazz get lucky and they move up to 1 and Cooper's the prize, then we have something to talk about. Now, the fear is, okay, before we catch a break, the fear is worst case scenario for the Jazz would be 5, okay? And most mock drafts, most people that cover the draft and cover these prospects, here are their top 5 prospects in whatever order. This is relatively close to a consensus about the names. You can look at other mocks to get different orders as far as how they'll come off the board. But, of course, Cooper Flagg at 1. Feels like Dylan Harper is a consensus at 2. I know Jazz fans remember Ron Harper tweeting out something snarky that if Dylan lands in Utah, he's going to get in the way. I don't think that'll happen. Ace Bailey is your number 3 prospect. VJ Edgecombe, the Baylor guard who had a really nice game against BYU and Provo this year. And then Trey Johnson, a freshman wing from Texas, is thought to be the number 5 prospect. So that would be, I guess I'll call it worst case scenario. You bring in Trey Johnson at 5 if you're the Jazz. Now, if that happens, if the Jazz fall all the way down to 5 and they bring in Trey Johnson or a player like it, and it's not Cooper Flagg, it's not Dylan Harper, it's not Ace Bailey, we are now moving into a potential reality. And I was thinking about this earlier today because I was looking at some NFL draft stuff. And as a lifelong Jets fan, I can tell you, more often than not, the Jets have a pick in the highest part of the first round as a non-playoff team. And usually the teams that surround them are the teams that are surrounding them this year. Your Tennessee Titans, your Cleveland Browns. Lately, it's the New York Giants, Jacksonville, the Raiders, the Panthers, the Saints, the Bears. It's like the same names every year trying to take another crack at the top of the NFL draft. And honestly, it usually is that way in the NBA as well. So you look at the Jazz, and they're surrounded by the Wizards, who have been in a perpetual rebuild for like 50 years. The Charlotte Hornets, the New Orleans Pelicans, Philly, of course, had a unique situation this year, but then it's the Brooklyn Nets, it's the Toronto Raptors. You know, it is more often than not, it's the same names that find themselves in this perpetual circle of trying to get back to relevance because winning and losing is a habit and it creeps in your culture. So that's the main reason why every time I hear this whole like, yeah, we tore it down to build it back up and we're trying to build it, like, we are in danger now. This is the third straight year the Jazz have been in the lottery, okay? And my fear is if the Jazz fall to 4 or 5 and they bring in a prospect that isn't necessarily game-changing right away, and we are back here in April of 2026, coming off a season where they won 15, 16 games again, are the Jazz the new Washington Wizards of the West? Is Lauri Markkanen Bradley Beal for the past, 11 or 12 years before he finally landed in Phoenix? Like, is that the reality of where we're going to be if the Jazz can't have a little luck on their side? Because the fact of the matter is, you can say whatever you want about their plan. What's undeniable and not debatable is their plan includes relying on a lot of luck. And that's not a Jazz exclusive trait. We always talk about the San Antonio Spurs dynasty under Greg Popovich, which never would have happened if they didn't get David Robinson at 1 or Tim Duncan at 1. Now you give them credit because they saw something in Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and all the group that was surrounding them. But you have to have that linchpin. You have to have that piece. And if you're the Jazz, you're hoping that that linchpin and that piece falls in your lap on May 12th, which would be Cooper Flagg, and then away we go. All right, Will Hardy addressed the media yesterday, okay? And we played you Justin Zanuck sound. We're going to play Will coming up on the other side. We'll do some more on this with Tim McMahon. We got Easton Folster to do a little golf, Belle Frazier for some hockey, and then Dave Fox for a bit of everything on a busy Tuesday drive. And it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. All right, Tim McMahon's going to roll by. Excuse me, coming up for the start of the 3 o'clock hour. So weird that I wrote Ethan when I know our guy's name is Easton. Easton Folster, Executive Director of the UGA and lifelong New York Knicks fan, which is so random. He'll stop by to do a little golf, maybe a little NBA on the program. Belle Frazier, who covers the Utah Hockey Club, is going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour. Then Dave Fox, 2 Pelotons, 2 Emmys. All right. Why do you think yesterday during, Jazz postseason media availability, Zanuck gets up, pays his respects? Got nothing from Will.
Oh, so you're mad that Will didn't single you out?
Yes. Look,
You're impossible.
If I'm showing up, okay, if I'm going to show up, just acknowledge it. Like, Zanuck did the right thing.
Do you know Will pretty well by now?
No, I don't know him at all.
I was going to say, there you go.
No, Zanuck was over there when I was working over there, and so we got to know each other pretty well. But it's like, he saw me.
Justin also is, like, more that way. I don't know that, like, Will's I've ever seen him, like, on the side with anybody besides Tony or Andy talking it up. I don't know.
Zanuck is just a nicer person.
I don't know if that's what I was saying.
No, I think that's you basically said Will's mean.
But Justin has, like, talked to me like in a normal setting, like just fellas talking back and forth. I've never had that with Will.
All right.
But he's busier, maybe. I don't know.
But, Zanuck gets up. He's like, yeah, like I said yesterday, game recognizes game. It's as simple as that, Porter. Don't overthink it. And you just think the head coach would, like, all right, look at this bright basketball mind that's gracing us with his presence. I should say hello, but he didn't.
And like you said, he didn't get any pointers, nothing from you. So
not yet. When he reaches out, I'm happy to give him the take. But I will say this. I've said it before. Trying to do this job in a very honest, authentic way. I think the Jazz have handled this rebuild in a pretty clunky manner. But one thing that I feel like they absolutely knocked out of the park is their head coach. I think I hope Will's here for a long time. And my genuine hope for him is that at some point the front office gives him a roster so we can see what that looks like with Will Hardy coaching really good players. I mean, he's maximized every group he's had. In my opinion. And so option picked up for next year, which is year 4. That's wild to think about. And his option has also been picked up for year 5. So he's got 2 years of security. But a lot of this, it's like razor's edge stuff, man. Like, hopefully at some point, will get good players to coach so we can see what it looks like here in Salt Lake. There's no such thing as a great coach without great players. There's dynamite analysis on a Tuesday. So, in case you not have a chance to hear it from yesterday, postseason Jazz media availability, here's their head coach, Will Hardy.
Losing can be tough on coaches. Is there any world in which another NBA team comes to you with a more winning program and says, "Hey, we want you to be our head coach"? Do you listen to that, or are you a Utah Jazz man for forever?
I'm all in, man. I'm not going anywhere. This is one that's a crazy scenario that you just brought up. Like, I don't see a world where that would happen, but it doesn't matter. Like, I'm committed here. I'm under contract here. I told Ryan and Danny and Justin that, I want to be here for as long as I can. The goal for me is to put a banner at Delta Center. And I try to operate every day, not just with my job or coaching our team, but how I try to be present in the community. Like, I'm putting my roots here in Utah. That's not even a question for me. In some ways, my conviction has never been stronger in terms of wanting to execute our long-term vision and ultimately win a championship here.
How do you feel that holding players accountable has gone this season? And I mean that from, like, kind of how you do it on a day-to-day basis, like what that looks like, and then also how you feel like it has it been positive or negative, or have there been struggles along the way?
I mean, in my opinion, I think it's gone great. I think there's an awareness that's needed when you're a coach in terms of when. A mentor of mine told me a long time ago that coaching is not about being right, it's about being right at the right time. And you have to evaluate each person, what situation they're in terms of when it's time to lay the hammer down and when it's time to put your arm around them and encourage them. And to me, that's the fun part of coaching, is that it's not 2 + 2 is 4. These are human beings. It's a moving target every day. And I think for the most part, it went great this year. I think our players know and feel that ultimately I'm in their corner. It is my responsibility to hold them accountable, though. And you have to hold the line. If you demand something and it's not met, you have to continue to hold that line. And I'm very proud of our players in terms of how they conducted themselves this season. Over the course of 82 games with 18 guys, of course there are moments where there's a back and forth or there's a disagreement, but there was never a moment this season where I felt like, oh, we've lost this person or they're going their own way.
Doc Rivers said this season that he doesn't think that coaches or losses should go on coaches' records during these like rebuilding seasons that you guys had. Kind of in the same sense, how do you go about evaluating a year like this when wins and losses doesn't really make sense to do such a thing?
I mean, I'm sure Doc was fine with the wins and the championship in Boston. I don't think it's fair for us to say, oh, this shouldn't be on me. This is the job. Like, this is the responsibility. This is what you sign up for. The good, the bad, and the in-between. I said to you guys last night, complaining is not a strategy. And sure, the losses go on my record, but you know, the opinions that matter to me are the people that are in our building, our organization. You know, they know what we do every day. And so I think that's just the shadow side of coaching, is that, yeah, when you lose, it follows you. But when you win, that follows you also. So I think, while I understand Doc's sentiment, I just think this is part of the job.
Coach, building culture is something that's so huge, whether it's just with your young players, some of the older ones, your coaching staff, everyone around you. How much of a focus is that for you this offseason, and how do you instill that in guys even when you're not around them all the time?
Yeah, it's the most important thing. For our young players to grow and develop, the environment is the most important thing to me. Like, we use the word culture. I think the culture is ultimately made up of the people that are in the building. I don't think culture is a slideshow. I don't think culture is bullet points on a wall. I think culture is the people that are in the building. And ultimately, the measure of your culture is how everybody acts when you're not in the room. The environment around our young players is the most important thing to me. We have to cultivate a group of people, that's players, staff, that give everybody their best chance to grow into the best versions of themselves. I think through 3 seasons, we've been pretty particular about who we want here, and we're going to continue to try to refine that process. That's an everyday thing, and I just want to make sure that while we're going through this developmental phase, that we're giving all of our young players the best opportunity to grow based on what we surround them with.
Does the idea of having 4 more rookies come in spike your blood pressure?
No. That doesn't bother me at all. I think I have plenty of experience now coaching really young players. There's good parts and there's tough parts, just like there's good parts and tough parts to coaching veterans. So, we will coach whoever is on the roster and try to help them all maximize their abilities and grow, and also try to help the 18 people that are in our locker room function as a group at their highest level. But, if that's the case, I'm sure there'll be plenty of snarky comments made on Twitter, but that's just the way it goes.
I'm going to ask you for the 6 rookies and sophomores. You're going through end of season meetings with them. What are the 1 or 2 priorities you want them to work on this summer?
Yeah. So Cody, it's about his body and his physical strength. We also have to do some things to refine his shooting. Isaiah, conditioning has to become a superpower, and then we have to continue to refine his shooting, especially the kind of sit behind 3 off the bounce when people try to go way under in pick and roll. Flip has got to become more solid on the defensive end. He has to be earlier on the defensive end. I think that Flip is used to making plays over the top over the course of his life, and I think at this level we just need him to be a little bit earlier defensively. And then as it relates to his shooting, he has seen some success, and now we have to tighten those things and make it his habit, because as expected there was some success, then some of the things started to drift a little bit, which with any new skill is not a shock to me. Like, there was no alarm bell that went off, but now with the off season he can really try to make those things a habit. Keontae has got to improve his defense. His defense can be improved in a variety of ways. Some of it is the mental aspect, but there also is an element of his conditioning and his physical strength. On the offensive side, his shooting discipline needs to improve. You asked the question about efficiency, and I think that those things need to be addressed, but more than that, I think just the technical discipline when he does shoot, not falling out of his shot, some of those things can be worked on. Taylor, we've got to get healthy. That's the only focus. And Bryce has to make his body his number 1 priority. I think Bryce has shown everybody that he has a definable, tangible NBA skill. When he shoots, it goes in. But his body is going to help him navigate all the other areas. Everything from changing ends of the floor to becoming more solid defensively. If he can do those things, it allows his skill to really shine.
Is there a type of player that you think this team needs, or is it kind of too early to be thinking of like where players would fit in?
Yeah, right now, I'm more concerned with the type of people. I think our roster at this point, you could make arguments for a variety of different positions, but I think we also have a bunch of talent in the building. Because everybody's so young, there aren't that many guys that stand out head and shoulders above the pack where you would say, like, oh, that position's not a need. I think we obviously, whenever we're acquiring players, the number 1 thing is we want good players. But the type of people, to me, is what's most important. We need tough, competitive people. And I think our process of evaluating, Danny, Justin, their entire group, the information that I receive through those processes, I think is very good in trying to identify the types of people that we're bringing in, because especially when you're acquiring very young players, the one and dones used to be outliers 5 or 6 years ago. Now everybody in the draft's 19, and so you have a little bit less basketball data on them, and you're ultimately trying to bet on human behavior. And I think that our group's done an amazing job of recognizing that and trying to identify the types of human beings that we want to bet on. That's what's most important to me, because I think, back to Lauren's question earlier, like, that's what adds up to the culture. That's what ultimately will impact the environment the most and give everybody their best chance. I think there's a lot of different player types in terms of basketball that can be really effective. And so for me, it's not about pinpointing, oh, we need X. It's about the human piece.
Along those lines, how involved are you in the draft evaluation process, and how much do you want to be, I guess?
I'm very involved, and I'm glad that I'm very involved. Obviously, there's so much work that's been done all year. This is a 1,000-mile road trip, and I'm coming in at mile 950, so I'm not going to try to drive. But I'm trying to really get an understanding of who has been identified as players that we, the Jazz, like, and why. So if there's 300 college players that have been watched all year by our staff, I don't have the opportunity to watch all 300. They try to narrow it down for me some. And so for me, I'm in a learning mode right now as we enter draft season. I take the lead from Justin and Danny in the front office, because that's the part that they have been digging in on all year while I've been coaching our team. So I'm involved, but in no way do I come in acting like I'm the expert. I need to really take the next month and a half and learn about who's in the draft and how it all fits together.
All right, there you go. Will Hardy addressing the media yesterday. Interesting question from Andy Larson, our guy from the Tribune, right off the top there. And it was interesting to gauge the reaction of not just Will Hardy but the room when Andy asked the question, if another team came calling and they were in a better position to help you win games as a coach, what would your reaction be? And Will. It's not like Will was going to be like, yeah, man, I really wish I had that Celtics job, or holy smokes, if OKC fired Mark Daigneault and they called me, I'd definitely take it. Will was never going to say anything other than what he said. He certainly handled it the right way. But the fact of the matter is, the win-loss record you have as a coach does follow you around. And the longer you get away from ultimately, the longer you get away from the situation you were in when you were losing games, the less people remember why you were losing games, if that makes sense. So Will, so far, through his 3 years, he's won, 85 games, and he's lost 161. His win-loss percentage is 34%, okay? Now, those of us that watch the Jazz and cover the Jazz completely get it. Like, I don't view any of those numbers as an indictment on Will Hardy, the person, on Will Hardy, the coach, on Will Hardy, the communicator, the leader, the developer. Like, he, to me, checks every box you would want as a head coach. When Danny hired him, it very much reminded me when Danny hired Brad Stevens in Boston. Not a lot of people knew. We knew who Brad Stevens was because of that crazy Butler run he had with Hayward. But a lot of people in the NBA kind of rolled their eyes at the hire. Like, okay, this dude is going to coach the Celtics who was coaching Butler. Yeah, they went to the NCAA tournament, and they had some great runs, and they came a Gordon Hayward Hail Mary shot away from making history. But you're hiring the Butler coach to coach the Celtics, and obviously it was an awesome hire. And Brad is now doing Danny's old job. And, if you're in NBA circles, you knew Will Hardy because he was a Team USA coach. He coached under Greg Popovich. He was Ime Udoka's number one assistant in Boston. But I think a lot of people around here were like, wait a second, you're hiring who? And it was kind of a similar situation where Danny knocked the Brad Stevens hire out of the park, and I feel like he's knocked the Will Hardy hire out of the park, hire out of the park. But if you're Will Hardy, you're looking at that win-loss record, and you're going, wait a second, that's how you are judged as a coach. It just is. All right, Porter, I feel like we played Zanuck yesterday, but I feel like before we break, we should play the highlight of Zanuck's comments.
The best part?
Yeah, I mean, if you missed any of it, we played it yesterday. But before we catch a break, I thought Zanuck really, off the top, handled himself brilliantly with class. And if you missed it, here was the highlight of what Zanuck said yesterday.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Spence, good to see you.
That's it. No, that's it.
Get started?
Cut off the sound. That's it. Like, that's all you needed to really hear to understand the type of guy that Justin is.
Yeah.
And also the type of basketball minds that were together in the same room.
Didn't mention a single other person in there.
No,
I was right behind you.
Yeah.
Whatever, man.
You know, no, you like I said, you don't have to overthink it. It simply is game recognizes game. That's it. That's all it is.
All right. I'm working on it.
All right. We'll catch a break. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Tim McMahon, NBA Daily Assist style. Easton Folster for some golf. Bell Frazier, Utah Hockey Club, and then Dave Fox. On a busy Tuesday. Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. NBA play-in games start tonight. Run throughout the course of next few nights, and we'll kind of understand what the playoff matchups will be. Spring basketball is always fun. We don't have any spring basketball around here as the Utah Jazz season came to an end over the weekend. Our next guest covers the Jazz when they're interesting in the NBA all the time. Tim McMahon, Tuesday afternoon. Timmy, happy Tuesday. How are we doing?
Howdy, partner. How are you?
I'm well. We don't do a ton of Jazz today, but the season is now behind us. Justin Zanuck and Will Hardy, media availability, postseason media availability. Last year, Tim, as you remember, the postseason media availability featured Danny Ainge and, big game hunting. None of that this time around. So just before we talk about games that are actually played and more kind of exciting NBA storylines, what's your anticipation about what this offseason will bring for Jazz fans?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I did not hear or see any of their coverage from their media availability. I was in this little closed-door, top-secret meeting with Nico Harris and some folks today. So I've been a little bit busy with that. But look, we all understand that the Jazz are early in a full-blown teardown. They're going to hold their breath and hope for some lottery luck. And then they're probably going to go through something pretty similar next season.
One more follow-up here, because I was talking about this earlier, and I used San Antonio as an example. And I don't know that anybody believes Cooper Flagg is Victor Wembanyama. But when you actually have the opportunity to land on a generational piece like that and other players around the league see what it looks like, then some of those players are maybe more inclined to look at you differently than they would, namely Chris Paul, who's not 25 anymore, or De'Aaron Fox as well. If the Jazz are able to land one and Cooper is the pick, and he does show early on that he is the guy that a lot of people think that he is that a doorway to maybe some possibilities for the Jazz to acquire talent that maybe they wouldn't have been able to prior to?
I mean, it's certainly a possibility. No disrespect, Salt Lake City's probably never going to be the number one market for NBA players. I would think that much like Oklahoma City, it's going to have to be more via draft and trades with guys who are either early in their career on their rookie deals or under long-term contracts. But you never say never. Maybe there's somebody whose wife likes to ski, something along those lines. But, I think it's going to have to be much more of a homegrown type of situation there.
You're not saying Devin Booker suddenly is going to fall in love with snowboarding? Is that what you're telling me, Tim?
Sundance isn't even there anymore, is it?
No, we lost it. Different topic, different day. All right.
Yeah, no, I know Book went snowboarding with the Kardashian clan during his All-Star break. It was very upset he wasn't in the All-Star game.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunate.
Sorry, I'm getting out of an Uber right now, heading to the airport. I hear Sacramento's beautiful this time of year.
No, you're good. You're good. Unfortunately, we can't even offer Sundance anymore. I'm not sure what that leaves us with. But let's move on to something far more fascinating. Juniors. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that to you to tell Devin Booker he can get a Furta for $475 on a Tuesday night at Juniors if he wants to. Deal?
It's a deal, baby.
All right, man. So take us behind closed doors. You were just hours ago with Nico Harrison, in addition to Rick Welds, hour-long session with you guys. Penny, for your thoughts. That must have been pretty fascinating.
I mean, defense wins championships. I only heard that about eight or 10 times today. And look, it's a situation where Nico Harrison didn't want to be in that room. This is something his boss asked him to do. I would say maybe even demanded that he do. And there was a lot of heat. Rick Welts wanted to talk about the hopes and plans and dreams of the new arena, and there weren't a whole lot of questions regarding that ask. Focus on this deal. Focus on this rookie deal. Seems to have gotten a lot of attention over the last 2.5 months. And, Nico doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on it. And it's tough. He took a very short-term outlook that's put the Mavs in a massive, long-term bind. And then he acknowledged, he's asked, hey, do you think you're going to lead the Mavericks GM when those picks come due, 27, 28, 29, and 30? He said he plans on finishing out his contract, which has 3 years remaining. So when a guy has carte blanche to operate a franchise and he's got a very short-term view, I think he's got some long-term problems. That sums up the state of the Mavericks right now.
No, exactly. And I just have to wonder, because I said the day after this went down, like, this is the type of deal that a basketball executive makes and he loses his job if the vision that he has on the other side, the zig when everyone else is zagging, if you will, doesn't come to fruition. And Tim, like, the crazy thing is Luka is so special that we talk about Anthony Davis like he's Stromiles Swift. I mean, he's really, really good.
Yep.
Is there any look? Luka is Luka, and he's in Los Angeles. Okay, if you look at what Dallas has left with Kyrie and AD and some of the other pieces, is there a world where this actually does work out in a way for Nico Harrison?
I think there was certainly an alternate world, and unfortunately, that's not the reality, right? Kyrie Irving tore his ACL. This year is complete. That's year one of the 3 to 4 year time frame, to use Nico Harrison's stated plan. Kyrie's not coming back until late December at best, maybe the All-Star break next year, and we'll see if he's himself. You know, AD's got a significant durability issues, and a history of that. Like, okay, I get if everybody's healthy, you've got a really tough team on paper, but even that team's got flaws. Like, dude, in 2025, shooting's got to be a priority. Like, you're not going to win playing 1992 basketball. So, listen, they might have been a tough out in playoffs this year. I think they probably would have been. But, again, call it bad luck. I think I've got a story coming out later this week on a bunch of chaos within their health and performance group, medical department. And there was a lot going on with Mavericks, and ain't much of it good.
As the man who literally wrote the book, you kind of use that at times metaphorically for guests, but you literally wrote the book on Luka, the Wonder Boy, out now at ESPN_McMahon on Twitter. Go grab it. You should know our guy Richard Smith walked into studio 2 weeks ago with a copy of the book, Tim. So he's all in. He's reading it. I just wonder how you digested what I perceive to be a historic, unique night, maybe in a way that I've never seen before. And I do look at this through the prism of the Jazz, where the Jazz traded a 25-year-old superstar. Donovan's not Luka. I'm not saying that. But Donovan didn't come back here crying when he was introduced. I was like stunned watching that. And if I'm a Mavericks fan, watching Luka's emotion, then his dominance makes me even more mad about the entire situation.
Well, and Luka today tried to, again, say, well, we weren't sure if he's going to sign the Supermax this summer. It's like, come on, dude. Stop that. He has said it, and we have seen it. Like, there was zero question. This guy got his butt kissed for 6 years and stabbed in the back halfway through his seventh. That's exactly what happened. And the vast majority of the Mavericks fan base feel like they, too, got stabbed in the back. And by the way, when I say the vast majority of the Mavericks fan base, that includes a gentleman of German descent who has a statue outside the arena. Dirk felt like he was betrayed in this whole deal. Mark Cuban, the vast majority of the Mavericks fan base. And I just don't see how this fan base recovers and embraces this franchise again if the person who made the deal is still running the front office.
Who else? I mean, of course, he needed sign-off from ownership, but was this really like a rogue one-man thing? And he called his buddy Rob Pelinka, was like, let's make a deal? Or as you've uncovered more throughout the course of your reporting, was this more than Nico, or was this just a one-man thing?
Well, that book that Richard Smith got does not have Chapter 19 because it was the book's, the first print run was before the trade. Now, you can get Chapter 19 with proof of purchase. Again, check out my Twitter account, and I'll break down to you in there that I don't know if maybe Jason Kidd didn't know about this until the 11th hour, and I don't think J. Kidd had the knife in his hand. But he didn't stop the arm from swinging. I'll put it to you like that. He did not stop Nico's arm from swinging. And I think Nico Harrison did a masterful job of boxing out Mark Cuban and, speaking that good old corporate speak and managing up Patrick Dumont. And I think Patrick Dumont has had a really interesting educational experience in his first full year of an NBA.
Interesting. All right, let's move off. Let's do a couple of other things before I have to say you lose because I know you have to hop off. Phoenix Suns, 3 of their last 4 coaches, they've fired after 1 year. And I suppose if you're Mike Budenholzer, you'll enjoy your $10 million per year for the next 3. But that's the tip of a Matt Ishbia iceberg that is very, very large, with the biggest payroll in pro basketball and 36 wins. What's the offseason look like in Phoenix?
Well, they can't just keep going the recent championship retread coach. Obviously, that has not worked. At a certain point, you got to say, hey, it's the problem of coaching, is the problem, the franchise. They've got to do a lot of soul searching, a lot of self-examination. Kevin Durant's getting traded. They're going to have to collaborate with him and his representation on that. I don't think they'll get anything close to what they gave up to get him. Try to figure out the Bradley Beal situation. It's been a complete and utter disaster. He still has a no trade clause and a max contract. That's a hell of a combination for a guy who's probably best suited to be a six man. Devin Booker is 10 toes down, to use old Damian Lillard phrase. He wants to spend his whole career in Phoenix. He will see it through until it's just painfully obvious that it ain't ever going to happen. And that day's not now. He wants to see this thing through. So they're going to try to retool and rebuild. I say retool. No, they won't rebuild. They'll try to retool around Devin Booker, and that's easy to say. And I think it's going to be really hard to do, given all the assets that they've blown through putting together the most expensive roster in NBA history that's already in Cancun.
Another team that let go of their coach, of course, was Denver and Michael Malone. I know that some time has passed. Anything revealing that you've heard about why they made this decision? And they did win 3 straight to end the season. What do you think they can do in the playoffs with a probably an interim head coach in Coach Adelman? I guess we'll have to see.
My understanding is those players really like David Adelman to get that job. And we'll see. They got a tough matchup in the first round, but they've got the best player maybe in all of basketball. That's going to be interesting. I think he's a sharp young coach. Again, he's a guy who, from Nikola Jokic on down, players in the locker room like, they respect, they want to rally behind. And it's a breath of fresh air coming off of, frankly, the Michael Malone ranting and raving and very loud voice wearing thin.
Vegas listed Steve Nash as the favorite to get that job. What do you think? Any possibilities there?
I've not heard that name, but sometimes Vegas knows a lot more than I do. I think if they win a playoff series, I think it'll be Adelman. So, now I don't know if they're going to beat the Clippers. They're playing awfully well. Kawhi's healthy right now and looks like that dude again. They've got a deep team. They play great defense. Your old guest, JVG, Jeff Van Gundy, is coaching them up. Pailu's a hell of a coach. It was a tough first-round matchup. I think if the Nuggets get to the first round, I think they've got their coach.
Jeff Van Gundy also listed as a potential hire for Phoenix or Denver. Do you think Jeff will ever get another head coaching look again?
I tell you, the job that he's done this year with the Clippers, certainly he would be on my list of candidates. Now, I don't know that Phoenix can, frankly, go with the old crusty white dude again. I think they got to probably go a different. I'm just telling you, I'm just being honest with you. I think as they are collaborating with their franchise player, Devin Booker, on this hire, I think they're probably going to have to go a little bit different direction.
Well, I think if you Google search old crusty white dude, Jeff's picture would come up, so your point stands. All right, before I set you loose, the play-in kind of fun, but we don't usually get a matchup like we get tonight. So Golden State, Memphis, Tim, what do you think goes down?
Ooh, some code violations. They like to talk about the code when these two teams get together. The Memphis Grizzlies have not beaten a good Western Conference team in, 2.5, 3 months. Maybe the Warriors are banged up. Maybe they're fatigued. But I ain't picking against Golden State against a Grizzlies team that is, to me, looking for a place to roll over.
Fair enough. Before I set you loose, you're betting the Tim McMahon paycheck, which I know you do not do. Hypothetically, are you betting Oklahoma City or the field out of the West?
All right. What I'll do is I'll bet the paycheck that I get from you, because that's a lot smaller than the regular
Fair
one.
enough.
In the West, I'll take OKC.
All right, buddy. All right, we'll set you loose.
Best point differential in NBA history. It's pretty impressive stat.
Yeah. Enjoy the game, buddy. Thanks for the time.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Tim McMahon, NBA play-in action starts tonight. And the play-in tournament, it's kind of a fun little wrinkle. It's just a few years old. But we don't usually get a matchup like this with the Grizzlies and the Warriors at the Chase Center in San Francisco. The Warriors won 3 of 4 this year. But the one game Memphis won, they won by like 50. Now, to Tim's point, ever since the Taylor Jenkins decision, the dismissal, as it were, Memphis has not played well against top-tier teams, and actually prior to Taylor's firing, they were struggling against the top teams in the West as well. Golden State is a slight favorite to win this game tonight. Now, the early game, both these games are on Turner tonight on TNT. And True TV makes a return to the landscape of basketball. Hawks and the Magic, that's the 7th place, 8th place game out of the East. That's at the Kia Center in Orlando. Of course, Quinn Snyder, the Atlanta Hawks. I would say a relatively disappointing year for Atlanta. Trae Young has not been what we are accustomed to seeing. I believe Atlanta has won 3 play-in games, though, with Trae as the point guard. So we'll see if Atlanta can get it done tonight. Then the Grizzlies and the Warriors will be the late-night game. And then coming up tomorrow, we've got the Heat and the Bulls and the Mavericks and the Kings from Golden One Center in Sacramento. So the way this works, in case you didn't know, the winner of the Heat versus Bulls will play the loser of the Hawks and the Magic. So the winner of the games tonight advances to the playoffs as the 7th seed. The loser has to play the winner of the games tomorrow to make the playoffs as the 8th seed, okay? So to make this simpler, let's say Orlando wins. They're a slight favorite. Orlando is then in the playoffs as the 7th seed, and Atlanta would have to play the winner of the Heat and the Bulls to advance as the 8th seed. So in the West, the winner of the Grizzlies-Warriors advances to the playoffs as the 7th seed, and the loser will play the winner of the Mavericks and the Kings for the right to get swept by Oklahoma City. There it is. Now, one local angle here for the game tomorrow night, Mavericks-Kings will be the last game that if the Kings win, if the Mavs win, they actually will have a chance to advance to the postseason. But chances are this is the last game that Alex Jensen will be coaching for the Dallas Mavericks before Alex lands here full-time. Of course, Alex has been on the job, busy with coaching hires, filling out his staff, and we're still kind of waiting word as far as what the roster will look like. Only, I think, 3 players on the roster as of right now, and the transfer portal is open, and a lot of good players have already made their decisions. So there you go. All right. Tim stops by today, courtesy of our good friends at IFA Country Stores. It's pretty warm now, and it looks like spring is here. So if you've been neglecting your yard and your lawn, it's time now to think about it with our friends at IFA Country Stores. IFA Country Stores have everything you need to care for your lawn, no matter its size or shape. Their 4+ lawn care program can promote healthy green grass this summer. Visit with their team of Pro Turf and landscape consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball and soccer fields, golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care that they can share with you about your yard, only at IFA and online at ifa.coop. Are we going to bring in Belle Frazier coming up in a bit? Utah Hockey Club will wrap up their season against the St. Louis Blues after a 7-goal performance against Nashville. A little bit too little too late, though. The wild card, of course, no longer a possibility. Hasn't been for quite some time. Dave Fox will stop by, do a bit of everything with Dave. Spring football up on the hill rolls on. The Forever 22 game coming up on Saturday. So you do get a little spring football for you Ute fans coming up. So we'll talk to Dave about that. The latest with the transfer portal and college basketball. If you missed, we played a little sound from Will Hardy to start things off. If you missed either Will or Justin Zanuck from yesterday, log on to ESPN700sports.com where you can have all of the sound that you would like. RSL, midweek kind of lull right now. We had Kurt Schmidt on the program yesterday. No news, at least tangible news. There are rumors, there are reports, there are conversations about RSL trying to bring in some reinforcements, namely a number 9, maybe 2 attacking-type players, according to the Salt Lake Tribune. Conversations they've had with RSL indicate they're trying to get 2 names across the line prior to the April 23rd deadline, which is the close of the primary transfer window in MLS, as we sit here on Tuesday, April the 15th. So RSL will be in action against Toronto coming up on Saturday. It's a home match. RSL is in the midst of, I think, 4 road games in their 5 matches. So one opportunity for you to see RSL at home before they hit the road. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Of course, history made at Augusta National as the world of professional golf now wondering what this calendar year could look like with an untethered Rory McIlroy. Do a little golf coming up on the other side, though. The executive director of the Utah Golf Association, and I have a PowerPoint presentation ready to present our friend Easton Folster I'm not sure that he's going to like it, but we'll do a little golf coming up on the other side before we launch into some hockey club and some college football on a Tuesday edition of the program. So don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. 10:35 on KMYU. We call it Talking Jazz, final Talking Jazz of the season. Porter, would you like to know what I did during the break?
You were eating, I bet.
I was not. But our next guest reminded me that I had to renew my membership of the Utah Golf Association, which I did. It completely slipped my mind. So I have renewed. I've been a member every year. Now I'm officially renewed under my home course, which is Bonneville, of course.
That was the ultimatum that Easton gave us. He's only joining the show if Spence renews. So,
well, do you think he's ready for my PowerPoint presentation on the current landscape of golf in our community?
I think he might have a different take on it than you. But.
Let's see what he has to say. The executive director of the Utah Golf Association and friend of the program and lifelong New York Knicks fan, which is wild. But Easton Folster on a Tuesday. Easton, happy Tuesday, buddy. How we doing?
Good, Spence. How are you doing? I'm glad to hear that you got that membership renewed. I looked up your membership and saw that it was inactive this morning, but I'm glad that you got that done.
Oh, so what you're saying is I was almost in trouble if I didn't get this done. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're keeping me on track. It is official that I'm back as a member of the Utah Golf Association. I have been every year. I just forgot to renew it. How you been, man? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, things are good. We're just kicking off, as you know. The weather's turned for us, and so we're back out on the golf course, and no complaints here. We're excited to get the year underway.
Easton, are you ready for my my bullet point PowerPoint presentation that I've put together brick by brick in anticipation of you joining?
Yeah, I heard you talk about it before the break. I'm excited to hear what you got.
Yeah, it goes like this. The hashtag that we're going to use to get it trending is shrink the game. You ready for it?
I'm ready for it. Go ahead.
Now, there's no way that I'm going to convince you that this is the direction that we should go because of your position with the UGA. But on a serious note, my question for you is, how are you guys handling this explosion? Because the fact of the matter is, and I promise you I'm not complaining. I kind of am, but I'm not, okay? Tee times are really, really tough. If you're not online a week prior to, right at 8 a.m., you're not going to get a tee time you want. Rounds certainly take a lot longer than they used to, and prices have been raised. Now, I'm a grown-up, and I understand how capitalism works. So this is just kind of the deal. I get it. But how do you guys handle this influx of popularity that the game of golf has seen explode over the past 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. And certainly you've, stated some of the issues that come along with the rapid growth that we've had. Of course, on our side, those are good signs, right? The popularity in the game growing is certainly, it's better to be trending up than trending down. And what comes with that are some of the things that you've mentioned. Now, obviously, the Utah Golf Association isn't necessarily tied to one particular course or another. We consider them all our member clubs, but we understand what clubs are going through in terms of, tee times being stacked. And then, of course, when tee times are stacked and their books are full, you've got slower pace of play, as you've mentioned. On our end, over the last number of years, our memberships continued to grow. We're growing by about 10% each year in our membership, so that's great. More people having a handicap index is awesome. And, to your point, our tournaments are now filling up in rapid time. It used to be that you'd have days, weeks, maybe even months to sign up for championships during the summer. And, this year, qualifiers are filling within a matter of minutes. So, on one side, these are good problems to have, right? Because we're growing the pie. I'm going to go opposite to what you said. We're certainly trying to grow the game. Can appreciate your sentiment towards wanting to have a little more accessibility, but they are problems that need to be addressed in the industry. Frankly, in Utah, we're probably short, 4 or 5 public golf courses. And we're, of course, as everyone knows that's listening, we're short on land too. So that's a little bit of the problem. If we had more land, we could build more golf courses and we could support the demand on some of these courses. But for right now, I would anticipate continued, full tee sheets and hopefully not a slower pace of play. We hope that the courses are out there managing that the best that they can. But you're right. They're good problems to face. I'd rather have this than the opposite where we're begging people to play. But we certainly don't want to lose players because they're not having the best experience possible at clubs. So we're going to have to balance that. There's no doubt.
You just brought up something that I was going to ask you about. And I don't want to sound like the middle-aged golfer who's belly aching, but you referenced courses staying on top of pace. Is that anything you guys have any involvement with as far, because look, I'm not going to name any specific courses because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there are plenty of courses that I play consistently where there's no marshal, there's nobody out there. And I know everyone wants to learn, and there should be a spot for everybody, young, old, male, female, whatever it is. But when you're running into a double date, let's say, that's in front of you at a golf course where they're doing the best they can to keep it together, and you're just sitting back there and, okay, we're going to take another one. Okay, you're going to drop again. Okay, all right. And nobody's around. I will be honest with you, it gets a little bit frustrating. So when it comes to encouraging the courses around the community to at least help people understand that they need to kind of keep the pace up, do you guys have any involvement with that?
Not directly. Certainly with our championships, it's on brand for us. We have pace of play policies and checkpoints that are pretty strict, and we take a lot of pride at UGA events in maintaining a sub 4.5 and many times sub 4 hour round, which I realize, from your point of view or the public point of view, that would be fabulous if you could bank on that when you go out there. We don't necessarily have any direct involvement with courses and helping them manage their pace of play, but I do think, to your point, there's an education piece where, if golfers are coming out for the first time, they may not know about some of the etiquette that's involved in playing golf, letting groups play through, playing at a quick pace. And so in a perfect world, yes, clubs would have someone out there, and they would have marshals, and they would have, even checkpoints that they could utilize to help people move along. But clubs are busy, their staffs are busy, and, I think the answer, as much as it is the education of the golfer, in a perfect world, again, you wouldn't overstack the tee sheet, too much. When you start seeing intervals that are 7, 8, 9 minutes between foursomes, it's inevitable that the pace is going to be slow, no matter who the golfers are that are in front of you. If you put that many people out there on the golf course, it's going to be tricky. But you referenced earlier, capitalism is kind of rules the day, for better or worse, and everyone's got a bottom line to meet. But, my wish for clubs, would be, to have those intervals 10, 11, 12 minutes apart and sacrifice, a number of foursomes each year. But I'm not running their business. They're running their business, and I know they're doing the best that they can. But I'm with you. I've been there behind the double date or the father and son, and you try to be patient, but, everyone's got things to get done, and they want to sneak around in. So it's a problem, but I know clubs are working on it. And, hopefully from the UGA point of view, like you said, some education, to our golfers through some of our newsletters and outlets will maybe help. But I don't know if I have a good answer for the double date that's in front of you other than politely asking to play through.
Well, and I want to be clear, like, God bless him, and I wanted to give my guy a hug while he was trying to encourage his date to pick up after her 5th swing, and she's yelling at him that she's never going to learn if she can't practice, and he's saying we can practice on the range. Like, I honestly do not want to come across as the bellyacre here, but it is an interesting thing and look, I haven't played my whole life, but I've played long enough to see what's happened with this explosion of popularity. And really most of it is good. Certainly in your standpoint, from your prism and perspective, it's only good. And I'm not saying it's not. I do wonder this, though, because I was having a debate with some friends after we played last weekend. And, I chuckle as I talk about raising rates because I grew up in a place where if you wanted to play a muni golf course, you had to drive 40 minutes and pay like $130. And the game wasn't very accessible to everybody where I grew up. And one of the things that I love about the golf community here is the accessibility and is the fact that there are a bunch of courses that are affordable and do make space for people that are trying to learn. So take us through the process, if you can, if this really is your world, of what you guys weigh when you decide to raise rates and you decide to make it just a bit more expensive around here. Again, I want to be clear, it's very accessible still and very affordable, but what's the mindset when you guys walk through that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, as you mentioned, the community in Utah, the golf community in Utah, I think we all take a lot of pride in how much public access there is at our golf courses. When you compare us against other states, we're 85% public golfers, obviously the other 15% being private, which is incredibly rare, and it's, really heavy on the public side. And so with that, there's as you mentioned, there's golf courses that are nearby. Now, I would say we're still short a few public golf courses to meet demand. But in terms of raising fees, I don't, obviously I'm not involved at the club level with that, but I think it's just like, any other business of balancing supply and demand. As you raise rates, maybe you end up, squeezing, some of the golfers out, which we certainly don't want. We want golf to be accessible and to be affordable for players. And I think our clubs in the state does a really good job. They do a really good job at that. But, the drawback, as you've said, when things are very affordable, the demand's high and you've got stacked tee times all day. And so I think it's delicate. But I certainly don't want to squeeze, any golfers out, based on affordability. I think our mission would be the opposite. I would continue to support our clubs in offering a fair rate and getting as many people out as we can while offering to your point, offering a good product while they're out there. I think you would agree, you've probably played in a variety of different states, being able to drive to the likes of a Soldier Hollow or a Wasatch. You mentioned Bonneville. I mean, that's just not common in other states to have that quality of a golf course for $50, $60, even $70. It's really rare. And I applaud our clubs for keeping golf affordable, but it's a balancing act. Of finding, the supply and demand and making sure those two remain balanced. Because as you're seeing now, it's obviously affordable for enough people that they want to come out and play, which we applaud. But, hopefully there's that experience at the club level that they're wanting to make sure that everyone has a positive one. So I think that's the march and the delicate march that they'll have to take moving forward. But it is a tricky one.
It's interesting, Easton, because, again, I want to reiterate and back up your point and my earlier point, which is I find the accessibility of really quality golf courses and affordability in our community very unique. And I consider it a great blessing as somebody who's really started to understand the process of what it's like to try to get better at this maddening game. It's so fun. And I badly want to, reiterate that it is, I think, a great benefit of the landscape of where we live, that you can play at so many different places. But you referenced that you feel like we're short a few courses. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that, because it does feel like there are a ton of courses around, and within a 20, 30-minute drive, there are several options. So let's elaborate on that a little bit. What's the kind of just the calculations, or why would you say that we're, a few courses short around here?
Yeah, when I say that, it goes back to the supply and demand piece.
Sure.
Obviously, when I say not necessarily that, there's not enough courses in terms of driving distance, because I agree with you, especially whereas, like I said, we're 85% public. There are a lot of golf courses, and especially public access courses in Utah, there's no doubt. But to meet the demand, right now, I would estimate there's probably a need for 4 or 5 more golf courses, to the point where, as you mentioned, you can go out and you can play around in 4 hours, 4.5 hours, and have that experience. Right now, as you've probably seen, to get a tee time, you've got to be, on at midnight if you want to get, first dibs on the best tee times, or on a weekend time. And so that's the tricky part. If we wanted to alleviate that a little bit, then I would say we'd have to build more golf courses. But as you know, land is expensive in Utah, and it's not overly accessible right now. And so that's what's so tricky about it. In a perfect world, we'd be able to build more golf courses to meet this demand. But you are right. I think the comment about needing more golf courses isn't necessarily, driving distance or accessibility. It's more just to meet the demand that we well referenced in this call.
This just barely popped in my mind, but I can remember, I don't know, maybe 2010, 2011, 2012, the Wing Point golf course out of the airport. And I can't remember when it closed, maybe 2018 thereabouts. Has there ever been any discussion of maybe opening up conversation to reopen the Wing Point spot by the airport? I'm trying to think, because I went to the airport 2 weeks ago to take a flight. I think there's still land there. I don't know. Maybe that's an option. You guys ever talked about that?
Yeah, I really wish, that idea would come to fruition. That would be great. That would be, and that golf course actually predates my time with the Utah Golf Association. I don't know that course too well and didn't have a chance to play it growing up, but I've heard nothing but great things. I know that there's, in the past been some ideas about, turning that back into a golf course. They obviously have not gotten off the ground. If I'm not mistaken, I think that land is owned by the airport. So I think there's, quite a few hurdles and red tape to get through. But, whether it's Wing Point or it's, other golf courses, I think that's the important thing for even the listeners, especially those that are golfers, is to get active in your communities and make sure to protect, the golf courses that are in these communities, because the land's valuable and not everyone has the same passion for golf as you or I might. And so I would say, to keep an eye out and to help us protect the golf courses that are there, because, I maintain that I think we're short a few and we can't lose any more. Like you've said with Wing Point, how great would that be to have that golf course still in existence? So we can't lose any more. So I would, encourage anyone that's listening that's a passionate golfer to stay involved in their community and make sure that our golf courses remain protected.
So the other thing we were kind of kicking around after we played last weekend is with the increased rates and with the number of people that are playing, is there a conversation about reinvesting these funds into the courses? Because there are a lot of courses, certainly here in Salt Lake and the community courses around here, that I love playing, but maybe a tee box here or there, maybe a tree here or there that could use a little bit of love. Any thoughts about reinvesting the funds that are coming in as a result of raised rates and as a result of packed tee sheets, reinvesting funds into courses to improve the conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I certainly don't get the privilege of seeing, what courses do and what they don't do. I know that they're all got their budgets just like we all do to meet, and, in different restraints based on who their owners are. City owned and municipal owned and county owned courses are going to have different restraints than a privately owned golf course might, different budgets to meet. I know they're all certainly doing their best. You do point out something that's really important just in any business, I think, is to reinvest into your business. And, some courses are probably great at that. And you probably notice it when you go out and play, whether it's new golf carts or it's level tee boxes or new cart paths. And then you probably notice the ones that have more restraints and likely, maybe city owned, where they have some budget constraints that maybe, the outside golfer doesn't always see. And so I know golf courses do their best to remain profitable where they can. I know sometimes they work on a tighter budget than we might imagine. But hopefully when you see that golf courses, reinvest into their course, you give the pro and the workers there a tip of the cap and acknowledge it. Because I do think they try, and I wish I could see all their budgets, but I know that they've got some pressures, as well as we all do in our businesses.
Before I wrap up my PowerPoint presentation, I have one more piece of it, Easton. I'm wondering if there's a way that I can contact local golf courses and utilize the friend of the UGA executive director to have standing tee times all year, whenever I want it, on any day I want it.
That would be nice. I'm sure we could trade something there. If I meant anything to those clubs, I would love to be able to trade something with you on that. But they may tell you to hit the road anyway, so I'm not sure how much help I could be. But by all means, if you ever want to drop our friendship and our name, I'd welcome you to do that.
Porter, please dial in a 9 a.m. standing tee time at Bonneville on both Saturday and Sunday the rest of the year. And if they push back, just say Easton said we could.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
I know, I appreciate it. So tell me this. Let's move over here. Of course, the Black Desert Championship, LPGA and the PGA events last year, and they continue. And, Patrick Manning in front of the show, although I can't get tee times through him either. I'm just complaining so much during this interview. I'm so sorry. It is an amazing track. I had a chance to play it once last year. I am chomping to get back there. What sort of, I don't even know what the word is, because obviously there's benefit. Obviously there's excitement, but I don't know that I've talked to you really about this, that we have a LPGA and a PGA event in our state. Like, what does that mean to you guys over at the UGA?
It's huge. I think it speaks, to our prior conversation here about the growth of the game in Utah. I think it's really neat to be able to have the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, the Epson Tour as well, and I think also the LPGA Legends Tour at Copper Rock. So we've got a few of the different, and the Corn Ferry Tour, of course, now at Ogden, that was previously being held at Oak Ridge Country Club. So I think we've got just about every tour coming to Utah, and it's really exciting. There's a lot of tourism boost, and we get to, show off on TV the landscapes of Utah. I mean, it sounds like you've had the opportunity to play Black Desert, but you're talking lava rock against green grass with red rock in the background and blue skies. I don't know that there's a more picturesque golf course in the entire country than Black Desert is for Utah. And so, hopefully not just golfers, but citizens take a lot of pride in being able to show off one of the more scenic areas of our state. And, for golf, I think it's, you have to think about the junior golfers too, where, they can go out and watch some of their idols. And now it's a lot closer than having to go travel to a different state. You can see PGA Tour players right there in front of you. And that's not something we've seen in a number of decades in Utah. So really exciting. We hope that it contributes to the popularity of the game. You may differ with that, it sounds like, but we hope that more people find a passion and love for the game through watching, some of our heroes up close and personal. But nothing but good things to say about the tour recognizing Utah as a destination for their events.
Wait a second. Wait just a second. I made a mistake, and I buried the lead because I have your Instagram pulled up. You were at the Masters. You were at Augusta, huh?
Well, that was a memory post. I was there 2 years ago, or I guess, 2023. So I have been, not this year, but it was more of a reflection post to celebrate Masters Week. I have been, and Augusta's amazing. I'm not sure if you've had the chance yet, but if you do, holy smokes, needless to say, you got to go.
I have not had the chance. I actually had my first opportunity to attend a PGA Tour event this year. I went to Bay Hill with my brother. And it was really cool. And my brother, if I'm a mild golf addict, my brother needs therapy. Like, he is over the top. And he was at Augusta on Sunday with his wife, and I went down to Orlando with him. And through a work hookup, he actually got us the ability to be what's called honorary observers, which I did not know was a thing. And we were able to be inside the ropes, and we followed Sam Stevens and Nick Taylor around.
Wow.
I like watching those pros up close. You always hear, and I know this because I've covered sports, been around sports my whole life, and I tried to play basketball until I played against pros. I was like, this is different. So when you see pros, it is different. But I had never seen a golf pro up close like that. So it was a really cool opportunity, really cool experience. But before I set you loose, what is it like to be at Augusta? What's the Masters experience like?
Yeah, so I've only gotten to go one time. I got to go through the lottery just like everybody else, and those odds, as you've probably found out, are crazy difficult. But I was fortunate enough to go, that one time. Hopefully I can go another, few times in my life. It was so much fun. I drew out for the practice round, so I actually didn't get to go during one of the competitive rounds. Some say the practice round is kind of the best way to start, though, because it's a little more relaxed. It's, a way to see the entire golf course where the players, aren't uptight. Maybe the galleries aren't, quite as big. But just to be able to walk the golf course. And it's funny when you watch the Masters every year, you kind of learn the golf course through the TV, but then to be there, of course, in person and to see its beauty and how really kind of the course looks different in person. I'm sure you've heard that a bunch, that, the undulation of the golf course at Augusta is much different in person and when you're walking it than how you can ever picture it on TV. But it's amazing. I think back just to this last weekend with some of the highlights, and you think, oh yeah, I've seen that there, and that is a crazy shot. And so it's a lot of fun. And then just kind of the what would I call it, the folklore of Augusta, getting to have the pimento cheese sandwiches and some of the concessions at like $1.50, which is crazy. It's a fun experience. It's different. No cell phones, no running. It's probably unlike any other sporting event that, most, get to go to. It's not a rowdy crowd by any means, unless maybe it's a Sunday with the final group, but it's really special, and it is as immaculate as it looks on TV. And so just as a fan of growing grass and keeping care of my yard, it is just amazing and so much fun to see.
How's the game, man? How's your game right now?
Yeah, I think there's a saying for golf administrators that they like to be right around a 12 handicap index. If you get much better than that, you're probably not working enough. You're probably playing too much golf. And then if you're getting too much worse than that, maybe people get the giggles when they're playing with you. So I like to maintain a 12, and that's right where I'm at. So I don't feel like it's improved in the last 3 or 4 years. I've just kind of gone along with I would call it a very average game. But I am looking forward to hopefully getting to play with you this year, a time or two at some of those media days. So hopefully we can make that happen.
No, for sure. And before I let you lose, any dates coming up you want to tell our listeners about? Any information about the UGA you want to get out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about it, and I appreciate you renewing your membership. I just encourage everyone to kind of get outside their comfort zone with golf this year, whether that's someone that's never had or kept a handicap index before. I think this is the year to get it done. And if someone's had a handicap index and hasn't joined a league because they were maybe too shy or didn't feel comfortable playing in that setting, to join a league. And for the league players that haven't ever played in a UGA championship or a championship at your local club, I just encourage everyone to get and take 1 or 2 more steps outside of your comfort zone with golf and play a little bit more and find something extra that you can do. But I'd encourage everyone to go to UGA.org, look through our membership benefits, and please call the office if you have any questions. We'd love to help, and hopefully we can welcome as many people into the UGA as we can.
Can the Knicks make it to the Eastern Conference Finals?
If you had asked me the last number of years, I know I've given some fairly homer takes on this radio show. I'm not feeling as good this year for a variety of reasons. As you know, I don't think the Knicks have won a meaningful game this year. A fine record. The simple answer would be I'm not going to put my money on the Knicks to make the Eastern Conference Finals. I'll consider myself lucky if we can beat the Pistons, but I'm going glass. I guess that's kind of glass half empty this season, but hopefully a couple trades in the off season and maybe we can get there. But I'm not feeling it, Spence. How about you? What do you think?
No, I think outside of Cleveland and Boston, they're as good as anyone in the East, but unfortunately I don't think they're close to either of those two teams, which is disappointing, but it's just fun to have playoff basketball in New York after basically 20 years of futility. So
I'm with you. Yeah, well said. I'm with you. Go Knicks.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for humoring me. I'm sorry if this turned into just me complaining about golf for 20 minutes, but it's always a pleasure to catch up, and I look forward to seeing you soon, okay?
Thanks, Spence. We'll talk soon. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Easton Folster, the executive director of the Utah Golf Association. All right, time now to give away a free round of golf to Dixie Red Hills. Let's see, Porter. We solicited some advice for your life and your career yesterday. We solicited some compliments for you the week prior, too. Let's see. Do you need more life advice or do you need compliments on a Tuesday? What would fill your cup?
I need more than any of that.
What do you
I
need?
need more than any of these radio listeners can give me.
Wow.
Just kidding. I don't need anything. I got everything I need.
Okay. 877-353-0700. Text in, let's just say your favorite golf course in Utah. We'll just be easy and boring today. 877-353-0700. Porter will pick one texter to go to Dixie Red Hills on us. Appreciate Easton's time. Did that turn into me complaining about the current landscape of our golfing community to the UGA director for 20 minutes, 25 minutes? Is that what that turned into?
A little bit.
What a great privilege to have the UGA director on so I can just complain to him because my rounds take too long.
I think there's a phone line you can do that, but we can do it on the radio, too.
I just want a direct line to him. I'm not going to call their number. I'll just have Easton on the show, and we'll talk about the current landscape of golf. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Coming up next, the Utah Hockey Club will finish off their inaugural season here in our market. Belle Frazier covers the hockey club for the Tribune, and then it's Dave Fox. That's your 4 o'clock hour of The Drive on a Tuesday. So keep it right here on The Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Hard to believe, but the final game of the inaugural season of the Utah Hockey Club here in our community is tonight in St. Louis against the St. Louis Blues. It seems like just yesterday we heard news. Gary Bettman joined the show, commissioner of the NHL, right after the announcement that the Utah Hockey Club was on their way to us after leaving Arizona. Our next guest covers the NHL and the Utah Hockey Club for our friends of the Salt Lake Tribune. Great to welcome back Belle Frazier to the program on a Tuesday. Belle, happy Tuesday. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for the time. So let's have a little fun today. Does it feel like this went really quick? I mean, it's the final game of the year, which is pretty wild. How does it feel to you?
It's pretty bittersweet. I think, like you said, when you look back at the beginning of the season last April when the team was getting announced, it feels like yesterday, but also 1,000 years ago, just thinking of everything the team, the players, the organization has accomplished to establish themselves as a legitimate NHL market since that announcement. I think a lot of the players have been talking about wanting to finish the season out strong, but haven't really been able to appreciate and reflect on the whirlwind of a year because they got here, got into training camp, and started the season. So I think this summer will be cool when everyone can kind of stand back and look at what was done and what's to come. And there's still so much work to be done on and off of the ice. So I think everyone's just excited. Obviously, a little bit of disappointment that the season ends tonight and there's no playoffs. But I think people are, grateful and excited for the future for sure.
Tell me what this has been like for you, Belle, as a lifelong hockey fan. And you and I, we share our Rangers misery together, and we both grew up in the same Northeast footprint, but you dreamed of doing this, and it's really cool when somebody actually achieves a dream. So what has this dream come true season been like for you?
Yeah, very surreal. I mean, I feel like I say it all the time, but I just feel so lucky that this is a job. It really sounds cliche, but I never feel like I'm working. It genuinely is so much fun, and it'd be fun to cover any NHL team, but it's extra special being here for the inaugural year. Seeing Utah fans fall in love with the team and the sport for the first time has been one of my favorite parts of the work, and also seeing the players get what a professional athlete deserves. They've raved about Smith Entertainment Group and their new practice facility and the support, and I think seeing it all come together has been really rewarding. But yeah, selfishly getting to travel alongside the team, see a bunch of NHL arenas that I'd never been to, talk to players and write stories that, I used to read as a kid growing up has been really special and something I don't take for granted at all. So I'm excited for this one last game, and it'll be a long summer. Like the players, I'm already ready for next year.
So it's good living out in Salt Lake, Belle, but when you're a child of the Northeast, culture shock, I guess, is one way to describe it. It's just not like where you and I grew up. What's your experience like being a member of our community?
It's been wonderful. I think people know I grew up in New York City in Manhattan, so it's a little more, rough and tumble, but people aren't as welcoming. It's a classic New Yorker vibe. Once you're a New Yorker, you get it, and you love it anyways. But I think it really caught me off guard how kind everyone was. I was welcomed with open arms at the Tribune, obviously, but also just the entire fan base, the support they've shown, the beat writers as well, everyone on the beat has been incredible. And my parents always joke about it. I was such a city kid growing up. I went to Boston for school, and the last place they thought I'd land was somewhere like Utah, but I've grown to love the mountains. I'm embracing the outdoors. I can't wait to go on some hikes in the spring. My family's going to come out, and we're going to do some national parks and check some stuff off the bucket list. So it pushed me outside of my comfort zone, but it's, I couldn't be more happy that I took the risk. It's completely paid off, and I feel really, really lucky to be part of the Salt Lake community.
Good for you, Belle. That's impressive because some people, they don't ever want to leave the footprint from where they grew up because it's more comfortable, and it's good to have different experiences. Speaking of different experiences, I have your Twitter pulled up. You guys should follow Belle at Belle Frazier 1. And I don't know what's going on, but I see a short snippet of a video where it's you, and it's somebody with a filter with a piece of broccoli on his head. Am I? I don't know what's going on here, Belle. Can you help me understand this?
Yes, so that is Brandon Merrill, or Broccoli Brandon, as some people know him. Utah Hockey Club is his Twitter handle, and he was one of the first people to create a fan group for Utah Hockey Club when the team was announced. He actually was from Arizona, used to be a Coyotes season ticket holder, and ended up back in Utah, but he started the whole veggie dress up, I guess. So that's actually a broccoli hat, and everyone calls him Elka Veggie. So he wears the broccoli hat, and people have worn carrot necklaces and turnip hats and a bunch of different vegetables. Someone was throwing raw broccoli on the ice after Vejmelka helped the team win a couple weeks ago, and the players have picked up on it. And, you know, it's one of the team's first ever fan traditions. Without having a name or real branding this year, fans have really rallied around. And I had him on the podcast this week. People can watch that, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, just talking about what it's been like to be a fan and be one of the people that started a tradition for them. And it was really cool. At the last game at Delta Center last week, Vejmelka signed his stick and gave it to Brandon in the crowd with his vegetable broccoli hat on. So the players notice it. And it's really been cool that they're recognizing the fans and rewarding them for the season.
I really hate to say this, Belle. When I saw that as I was scrolling through your Twitter, I thought it was Falk. I thought it was Aaron.
Stop. That's so funny. I mean, maybe Aaron's wearing a broccoli hat too. We never know.
I mean, the glasses, the beard. For a minute, I thought you had your editor on your podcast with a piece of broccoli on his head, which, by the way, as a friend of Aaron, nothing would have made me happier, Belle.
That's next week. Tune back in for next week.
Love it. Hey, when did you start your pod? I'm not sure. I probably should have known this. When did you start the pod?
A couple months ago. We're on the 15th episode, so 3 or so months ago.
And how has that been? How's it been for you?
It's been great. It's been really cool to kind of reach fans in a new forum. I mean, so much of journalism and media in general is consumed on Twitter and social media and video now. So we were just trying to make another place for Utah Hockey Club fans to get their information. And I've really enjoyed it. It's more long form interviews with people that fans are interested in, but I also love talking to, like we had Matt McConnell, Dominic Moore, Bill Armstrong on, and we do beat reporter roundtable. So just another avenue to be able to talk about the team that's maybe easier to digest when you're in the car listening instead of reading a story every week. So we're experimenting with how people want their coverage, but I think it's gone well so far.
May I ask you a question, since you are a young and I am an old?
Sure.
Is there a filter for everything? Like a filter to put broccoli on one's head is something I was unaware that existed. Like, is this a Snapchat thing? How did our guy do this?
He's actually wearing a broccoli hat.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, you're old.
Okay. They look like a filter. I didn't know broccoli hats were a thing.
There are definitely filters, I'm guessing, that could also give you a broccoli hat, but that one's real.
Wow. Well, I respect the dedication. Tell me our guy's name, the broccoli hat guy?
Brandon.
Shout out to Brandon. What has your experience been like, whether it's Brandon with the broccoli hat on or other fans that you've interacted with? It's kind of an interesting time in our market because we have a rebuilding basketball team with a fan base that stays engaged when it comes to attendance, but a lot of people, unfortunately, have turned the TV off, and they're kind of wondering when the Jazz will be good again. But it's a little bit different because the Utah Hockey Club is still in the midst of a honeymoon period where I think most of the fans were just excited that it was here. And yes, like, you know this, I mean, the Stanley Cup playoffs are unlike anything sport has to offer. So I badly want our market to experience it because it's awesome. But after it became apparent that wild card playoffs no longer a possibility, I didn't feel some like massive, oh man, because I think most people understand it. How would you articulate, your interactions with Utah Hockey Club fans and their experience having the NHL here in Salt Lake?
I agree with you. I think there was not a big letdown when they were officially eliminated from playoffs. I think it was kind of a bonus that they kept it interesting and tight for that long. And from my interactions with fans, it feels like people are just so happy to have a team, period, whether they're winning or losing. They're happy to get to know the players and be there for the wins and come back after the losses. So I think that expectation, it didn't drop off. Fans are still tuning into the last 10 games that don't have playoff implications. They're still excited for next season. Like you said, kind of a honeymoon phase, but also because they weren't really expected to make the playoffs. They were just wanting to play meaningful games at the end of the stretch. But I'm really, intrigued by how the team and fans will react next year, because the inaugural season's done. You're going to likely make a trade this off season, sign a free agent, sign Logan Cooley, use some of your cap space. And now that's the 5th year of the rebuild. And now the pressure is kind of on. You don't have the excuse for it's your first time at Delta Center and first time playing in front of fans and first time blending veterans with youth. Next year, they've got to get going. And so it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that, if they're able to actually turn a corner, and if fans want more than just an NHL team, if they want a winning team, a team that's making consecutive playoff pushes. So that's the goal, and that's the hope for everyone. But I definitely do think mood might change next year based on the success the team has when it's not the glitter and shine of the NHL's new market.
Well said. And ultimately, this has to be looked at as a positive season on a number of different levels. The Arizona Coyotes had one 80-point season since 2014, and the Utah Hockey Club had 84 points with 4 games left, and they've actually finished off pretty well. So they surpassed really any mark they had in Arizona for basically a decade. And when you look, Bell, at the offseason, $21.53 million in cap space, and they have their 6 picks in the first 6. They have the first, second, third, fourth, and their 5th round picks. So they've got money to spend. They have draft picks at their disposal. What do you think the offseason looks like for the hockey club?
I think they're going to have to make some legitimate moves if they want to take the next step next year. I think we've talked about it a lot, but a top 6 center or just a goal scorer, an automatic goal scorer who's not going to be inconsistent, and that's a lot to ask from an NHL player. Obviously, they're not going to score every single night, but they need someone in their top 6 who is kind of a game breaker other than Keller, Cooley, and Gunther. And so I think that's something to look out for. And like you said with the record, too, I think you just want to keep seeing progress with the guys you have. And statistically, the team is better than it was last year. Clayton Keller is 1 point away from his first 90-point season. Nick Schmaltz is at a career high with 62 points as well. So those guys having consistency is going to be big. But I definitely think their cap space is helpful, but I would look for what could come through with a trade. That's how they got Sergachev and Marino last year. Those guys weren't free agents, and I'm not saying that they're not going to make a splash, but if you look at the list of free agents, it's not like any of those guys are the perfect fit for what Utah needs. So I think the Larmstrong will probably make some calls. Like you said, they have a lot of picks they could trade. They have a lot of prospects in Tucson and elsewhere that not all of those guys are going to make the NHL roster that they could decide to part with. And they have some guys on the roster right now who haven't had the seasons that they thought they would or the playing time that they thought they would, and they might want out as well. So I think there's a lot of different avenues that Utah could take this summer, but I would be very surprised if they came back with the same roster. I think there's a very, very low % chance that will happen. I think Ryan Smith wants to go out and spend some money, and I think they want to, like we keep saying, they want to turn a corner, and they're not going to do that with the team they have right now.
For all intents and purposes, Bell, at least the way I covered the team, understanding, like on paper, a 3 or 4 point gap to get into the wild card with 15 or 16 games left doesn't sound like a lot, but in reality it is. And for all intents and purposes, and we talked about this, the back-to-back, they lost to Detroit, they got smoked here, then they went to Tampa Bay, got shut out 8-0, then they lost it. The Panthers 2-1. That, to me, that was like, all right, it's really going to be tough. But they've won 6 of 8 since then, with a 5-goal game against the Blackhawks, a 7-goal game against the Kraken. Then they hung 7 on Nashville the other night. What does that say to you? Is that like, okay, the pressure's off and they can just play free? They have actually kind of under the radar played some of their best hockey over the past couple of weeks.
I think they're building momentum for next season, and that's what a lot of the players have said. They don't just want to throw away the rest of the season. They want to go down swinging, and tonight will be interesting too because St. Louis, even though they won those 12 straight recently, they've lost a few in a row, and they don't have a playoff spot clinched yet. They have 94 points, I believe, and Calgary has 92 points with a game in hand. So if Utah beats the St. Louis Blues tonight, it keeps the Calgary Flames alive and could be the reason that the Blues miss playoffs. So Michael Kestering and Andre Torini talked about it this morning that, sure, it's not going to put them in the playoffs, but they get a say in the Western Conference picture. And they want to prove that they can, turn the tide in these types of games and that they're not just going to roll over because the Blues are ahead of them in the standings. So I think that's what motivates these guys right now. And also there's a lot of players that don't think they're going to be in Utah next year that are playing their hearts out for contracts. You look at a guy like Kyler Yamamoto, who was in Tucson for a majority of the year, which I disagree with that decision, but he got called up for the last part of the season, and he's been in the lineup trying to earn a one-way deal with Utah or elsewhere. Same with defenseman Nick DeSimone, who got picked up off of waivers from New Jersey this year. Nick Bukestad is on an expiring contract, as is Michael Carconi. So I think there's a lot to play for these guys other than just a playoff spot. I mean, they've also played Nashville twice, who are at the bottom of the league. Kraken are at the bottom of the league. Dallas, that was their first time beating them this season, which was great, but they were missing 3 of their top defensemen, 2 forwards, and their backup started. So not to take away anything from the wins at all, because the win over Calgary and the win over Winnipeg were really strong, complete games for Utah, but I also think their strength and schedule has kind of teetered towards the end.
Back to a question regarding the fans and the community. I think I probably went to maybe 10 games would be my guess. And, you do see a lot of sweaters from the opposing team because this is the first year that we've had a team here, and plenty of support certainly from the fans for the Utah Hockey Club. But what sort of dynamics or elements have to fall into place to continue a year one that I would characterize as a success and turn it in to really building this thing to the point where the fan base just continues the progress and the culture continues to be built? Playoffs would help, certainly, and winning always helps. But as this thing is built moving forward, what are some of the things you're looking to have fall into place?
Yeah, first, completely agree. Big success. I mean, I don't mean to discount at all anything that these fans and this organization has done this year. I think it's been a really big success, and there's so much more room for growth. And I think that starts with a name and branding and a mascot and being able to create cheers and traditions around that, because while the fans have done a good job, they really weren't given much to work with. So I think that comes over time too. It's not going to come in next season just because they have a name. It'll probably take a couple of years, and then building rivals as well. Like you said it, winning playoffs. I remember my first time going to a Rangers playoff game, and you are hooked beyond belief. And Utah has had some really exciting wins at Delta Center this year that feel like a playoff atmosphere, but it's hard to describe what NHL playoffs actually feel like once you're in it, and the stakes are there. And it'll be really cool to see the players that stuck it out in Arizona for 7 to 8 years, like Keller, Krause, Schmaltz, and the guys that have really helped turn the page for this team be part of that. So I think that'll just take it to a whole nother level. And then Utah's on the national stage nightly. Everyone watches the NHL playoffs, whether your team is in it or not. So I think that will make a really big difference. And then fans will just keep learning the game as well. I think the more you watch and the more you read and listen to whatever it is, podcast, media, you get it more. And then the crowd is more engaged because they understand offsides or what's a good transition or a good defensive play. And it's not just a good goalie stop or, a fight. So I think that it all comes in time, and they're on a really good path to getting there. And it's one of the more exciting things about the future of the team.
What was your, before I set you loose, what was your single favorite story that you covered this year? And I'll say not related to results, like off ice, personal stories, something you uncovered about one of the players.
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, I think a fun one, less sentimental, is definitely the Mikhail Sergachev eggs and chicken story. That actually, I was interviewing him in a one-on-one interview more about his time in Tampa. It was coming up, he was playing the Lightning for the first time, and somehow we got into talking about his backyard and how he's bringing eggs from his chicken coop to his team, and how he was mad at Nick Bukestad because he told him his chickens might have bird flu, and this whole thing broke out, which I think those inner dynamics in the locker room, fans have really gravitated towards. So it's been fun to bring those out. And recency bias, but I actually just talked to Robert Bertuzzo's parents. Robert Bertuzzo, 36 years old. He's in his 14th NHL season, and we talked to him this morning. He's going in the lineup for the first time in 3 months. He's dealt with a lower body injury, but also just kind of been their 7th extra defenseman, their depth defenseman, and he's on an expiring contract. And he wouldn't make an official announcement, but he kind of hinted towards retirement. He said, I'm not going to make anything official right now, but he got emotional about playing in St. Louis. It's a place where he spent 10 years before coming to Utah, where he won a Stanley Cup. And I talked to his parents today. They did a 14-hour road trip from Thunder Bay, Ontario, to drive to St. Louis to be here for the game. And, I think it's just the human side of hockey that what makes the sport so great. Of course, it's the goals, and everyone's been to games at Delta Center and how excited those are. But his parents were very emotional about it too. Even though he's an older one in the Utah Hockey Club locker room, he's still their kid, and they're going to be there with the team. And both St. Louis and Utah is taking care of his parents tonight. So that's up on the Tribune now as a pregame read. But I love doing that stuff, getting kind of beyond the scoreboard. And I've been lucky that the players and parents and families and fans have been so willing to tell their stories this year.
Well, Belle, it's been a pleasure to have you here. You do a really good job and help all of us understand kind of this new sport that we're all excited about but getting used to. So appreciate the time. Safe travels, and we'll chat soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, Belle Frazier covers the hockey club for the Salt Lake Tribune. Stops by today courtesy of our friends at Burt Brothers with over 30 years of experience and nearly 30 locations. Burt Brothers ASE certified technicians bring expertise and professionalism to every interaction. One-stop shop for reliable repairs and maintenance, from tires and alignments to fluids and brakes. Tax Day savings sales in full swing. Buy 3 tires and get 1 free on select Goodyear, Falcon, and Firestone tires. Plus, get an extra $50 off on purchases over $500 using the Burt Brothers card. Tax Day savings sale also includes saving $40 on your Valvoline synthetic oil change. Stop by our Burt Brothers or Tie Busters location or schedule an appointment today to experience the trusted service that has made Burt Brothers a Utah favorite for over 3 decades. Burt Brothers doing it better since day one. Dave Fox will join us coming up in a bit, but before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Professionals, where you can save a grip of money on a grip of different things. That's the bottom line. 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
It's truly a lot of things that we have to offer. But, guys, the thing is, it's a lot of money that you can save by a simple phone call. Take advantage of the upgrade. Get the biggest, fastest DVR out there. Auto hops commercials. Auto records your games. You have access to over 6,000 different apps through the Hopper system. So basically you have a system that does it all. Gives you the traditional TV, full-on recording. You have access to all your streaming apps that you want, all built into one system, and it's easy and simple to use. Plus, you have access to your DVR recordings wherever you go. Call us up and take advantage of this. 2-year offer, 2-year price guarantee. We'll throw in some movie channels and dinner at JCW's, have you installed for free as early as next day. And guys, you will not get a better price anywhere else, and that's something we guarantee. Plus, we actually even do an extra homework because Dish sends out these pre-qual gift card offers to specific customers, and we're going to check to see if you got one and maybe you just missed it in your junk mail, and we'll even add that on top of the promotion. We just want to take care of you. Gives you the best deal. Call us up today. Take advantage of this offers while we still have them. They're always changing, and actually the big thing is just start saving now. Don't stop overpaying. Stop paying that cable company way too much money. Call us now, 424-DISH, 801-424-3474.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. We'll catch up with Dave Fox coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. It's a big night. It's a big, big night for fans of local sports television programs. Maybe even a historic night as the final edition of Talkin' Jazz.
For this season.
Not ever.
Yeah.
But still,
Okay.
It's a big night as we
Huge.
welcome in the offseason, talking sports. And the man, not the GOAT, but the man over there is Dave Fox. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Good. How are you? Not normally, but over the last few years, Locke has wrapped up Talking Jazz.
Yeah, but come on.
But you set me straight last year,
Yeah.
and so now it's you.
Yeah,
Plus he wasn't available.
Well, I mean, ultimately, people just want top shelf talent for the closer.
That's true.
Right?
That's where your hardest throwing pitcher is, right? He's the closer.
Yeah, indeed. So you
There
bring
you
in
go.
the talent to close out the season tonight, 10:35 KMYU.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Care to give us a little primer?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit. We talk so much about Cooper Flag, the old capture the flag. But what if that doesn't happen? Spence is going to tell you why, it's the sky is not falling and kind of take you through the next few. And then the question I always have is this group of Jazz players we just watched, limp through this season. Who's coming back that really excites you, that needs to step up, that needs to be the man? And Spence is going to give you a couple of names for that. And I think we're going to get your NBA predictions as well, East and West champions and the overall champions. So what more could you ask for? And Timmy Peterson's going to drop in the top 5 Jazz players.
My guy.
Yeah.
My guy, Timmy
there you
Peterson.
go.
How is my guy doing?
He's,
How's Timmy?
I just left the studio to walk over here, and he's hard at work putting it all together for you.
Right, because he puts together all the shows. He writes the 5 questions with Spence. What exactly do you do over there, Dave?
I read it.
That's what you do. So you're a professional reader. I mean, you do it at a high level. You are my life mentor.
Yeah.
40 years in this business with never having worked a day in your life. I can remember back in the day when you would take a helicopter to high school football games.
Yeah.
Was that before the Fox's Den?
No, that was after.
Okay.
But now what I do is even more time-consuming, as you know, because I'm calling the games.
Right.
So, and 2 a week.
But do you take a helicopter to those games?
No, but that would be cool.
You need to get that in your contract.
You might be onto something.
Who do you negotiate your contract with?
Our guy can't.
You know what? Leave that to me. I'm going to negotiate.
You're going to handle that?
I'm going to negotiate your next
You're
deal.
going to work in a helicopter?
I'm going to get you helicopter transportation
Awesome.
every high school football and basketball game.
There's a reason we don't have a helicopter anymore. You know how much it costs to operate those things?
A lot.
Yeah.
So, but refresh.
I'm going to have to drive.
But refresh my memory. Once upon a time, weren't you taking helicopters to high school football games?
We called it the touchdown report, and I
That's
hit
right.
3 games a night on Friday.
Yeah.
In the helicopter, we'd fly in. Back then, a lot, the kids still watch television, so they'd have
Sure.
signs for you and cakes and all treats and everything. And we'd hit 3 games in about 90 minutes, and then come back and put together a whole report on it. It was so much fun. I love flying. Loved it. It was just a blast.
What a setup that is.
Oh, it was great.
Why'd you guys stop doing it? Is it just
I don't
the
know.
expense?
Because we don't have the helicopter anymore. That's first of all, you need
That's
a helicopter.
that's a problem.
I will tell you a funny story though. The first year after we didn't have the helicopter, somebody at the station tried to get me to do what we call the chopper report, but it was a Harley with a sidecar.
That would be awesome.
They actually did. I drove into I'll never forget. It was at Bingham High School. Did it once, and then it was like, yeah, we're not doing that again.
Were you driving the motorcycle?
No, I was
or
in the
you were in the
sidecar.
sidecar.
Yeah.
Who was driving the bike?
Our GM at the time.
All right.
He's not there anymore. But it was his brilliant idea, and I was like, this is a terrible idea. We're
Hear
never
me
doing
out.
that again.
Moving forward, Mikulich on the bike, you on
Hey,
the
me in the
sidecar.
sidecar?
Yes. And I think we need to bring that back.
No.
Wow, a hard no?
We're not going to do that.
Just a hard no, huh?
Yeah. And here's the funny thing. Talk about this is just, Hollywood, right? I drove to the game and then got in the sidecar around back behind the school, and then we drove around.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't even reality. It was
a little
terrible.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Hey, show business, showbiz.
It was horrible.
Tell me what it's been like as the Jazz TV partner. When Quinn had his best teams with Gobert and Mitchell, and they're winning 55 or whatever games every year, and they're advancing to the postseason. The Jazz were the second highest rated NBA team from a local standpoint. Number 1 was Golden State. I remember this because I was over at the team at the time. And the Golden State Warriors team that I believe they're number 1 again this year in local TV ratings. But back then, that was peak Steph, that was peak Durant, that was peak Clay, and peak Draymond. So they're winning NBA titles. But the Jazz, from a local standpoint, were number 2. And, of course, when the winning stopped, the attendance has been good, but the TV sets have been turned off a little bit. So what's it been like to cover them as the TV partner?
A couple of things. First of all, remember when the Jazz, back in the days you were talking about, they weren't on local TV. They were on cable. They were on, what was that channel? It was a Rocky Mountain something network.
So, yeah, some RSN before they all went bankrupt.
Right, exactly. It doesn't even exist anymore.
Was it Root Sports? I think it was Root.
It became a number of those things.
Yeah.
It was always the same thing. They had like some 10-year deal that was absurd. So in that respect, I don't even know. We weren't able to measure that against overnight normal television over-the-air ratings.
Gotcha.
And then two other things I'll tell you. The ratings have actually been, people still watch the Jazz, they, more so than the hockey, but the hockey doesn't have as many television viewers because the station the hockey is not on Comcast.
Oh, interesting.
If you're aware of that.
I did not know that, no.
So that hurts a little bit. So the numbers it's kind of like the fan base. I mean, what they have gone through this year is difficult, whether it's, whether you're a player, whether you're a fan, whether you're a broadcaster. I mean, it's tough, but they're still there. And it's the same thing with viewership. They're still watching. So we don't get the overnights quickly as we used to, but I'm sure at the end of the season we'll do some big breakdown on exactly how good those are, and I'll let you know.
Did you hear, I did not mean to have a ratings conversation because I know you guys do a good job, but when teams lose, fans are going to turn the TV off. But did you hear Justin Zanuck yesterday? Did you hear Zanuck's comments?
I heard part of it, yeah.
Porter, can we bring back the biggest highlight from Zanuck's presser yesterday for Dave? You tell me when you're ready for that.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Spence, good to see you.
All right, that's enough. Okay, good. No, that's enough. No, I just wanted to, in case you missed it.
You got a Spence mention? I missed that part.
Dave, don't overthink it. Game recognizes game. It's not a big deal. It's just like when you're two basketball minds in the same room, you just kind of have this synergistic thing.
Okay, I got to text Timmy right now. I just got a new idea for the open of tonight's show.
Well, but
did that make the feed that they sent
Of course
out?
it did.
Well, because sometimes they edit those.
But, I mean, obviously I'm being tongue-in-cheek because Justin,
I'm not.
The first thing that Justin said after greeting a fellow basketball savant, again, I don't want to talk about it, was he praised the fan base for sticking with them during this process. And Justin's point, which is correct, is if you go across the landscape of pro basketball and if you attend games in other markets where they're doing what the Jazz are doing, those buildings are maybe half full, maybe. And those TV ratings are in the toilet. What does this say to you about the culture that has been built here for 50 years? The Jazz fans are so intensely connected to this team, even when they're not serious about winning.
Well, two things. First of all, there are some decent teams in the NBA that don't have full buildings, so don't forget that. I mean, I'm obviously, the Lakers fill it up and the top teams do. There's no doubt about that. But secondly, if you go back over the Jazz have been through a couple of these, never as bad as this, obviously. They have more losses this year than they've ever had before. But they've been through a couple of rebuilding processes. Remember when Jerry Sloan left and Ty Corbin took over and the team really struggled? And even then they were still filling up. I think a couple of things are the Jazz have been the pro sport for so long that, everyone just has embraced them. There's more now, obviously, and it's growing, but from the word go. Now, the first couple of years, it wasn't so good, right? Your dad was involved in helping turn things around, so he remembers those days. You remember the old Frank Layden line when, someone called up what time the game is. I said, what time can you be here?
When
Those
can you be
like
here?
that, yeah.
Shout out to Frank,
Classic
by the way.
line.
Shout out to Frank.
Absolutely. But I think when you adopt a team and you're that invested for that long, your heart just doesn't leave it. And kids were raised on it. And now they're raising their kids on it. And maybe it'll change when we get more and more. We've got a hockey team now. We have soccer in the summer. And what happens if the Millers get Major League Baseball, which I think will happen. Maybe that dilutes some things. But I just think, there's a loyalty, a level of loyalty that you just don't see with other markets that have way more choices than we used to have. It's getting better now. And they've just stuck with it. It's very impressive, really impressive. But I don't know how much longer they can do
And that's where I want to go next because, and Justin alluded to this, and Will was kind of asked about it loosely as well. And the reality is, it's just like people ask me, like, hey, how will Alex Jensen's first team be? I'm like, I don't know who's playing for him. I have no idea. And so we get into a conversation like, what do the Jazz look like next year? And the reality is we don't know because there are so many dominoes that have to fall and pieces that could fall into place. And if they get one, and if they get Cooper, we have a different conversation. But their floor is 5 as a result of being the worst team in the NBA because of a strange ecosystem that is incentivizing losing, and that's what pro basketball does, which needs to change. But if you're going to incentivize losing for teams in certain situations, if I'm Zanuck and Ainge, I'm doing the same thing they're doing. So I get it. But as a result of being the worst team in the NBA, your prize is a top 5 pick. But it could be 5. And if it's 5, we get into VJ Edgecombe and Trey Johnson and players that have some promise, but I don't think it's fair to expect them to land on the ground and do what Cooper could potentially do. So if the lottery luck doesn't go their way, the fact of the matter is next year could look a lot like this year. And we could be sitting here in April of 2026 having the very same conversation we're having right now. So my question for you, David Fox, is how long does this fan base stick around if there's no tangible proof they're moving in the right direction?
Well, I think you could survive another year with a little bit of a drop-off. But, Spence, let me take it to the next level here. I think if the Jazz somehow Lady Luck shines on them and they get the number 1 pick and they end up with Cooper Flagg, I don't see how you can do anything but go full speed ahead. And let me ask you this. Tell me if you disagree with me on this. If they had not played the tank game and had not sat all the players that they did, I'm not saying that they weren't actually hurt, but you know what I'm saying. If maybe they win,
David, they weren't actually hurt. Will you
okay,
stop?
Never mind. I'm trying to be Adam
Calm
Mikulich
down,
on
Mikulich.
this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So let's say they don't do that. Would you agree with me that if everyone plays when they're supposed to play all the time, this might be another 10 or 15 win plus team, which puts them over 30, which means they're knocking on the door of being a playoff team. So next year, if you do get Cooper Flagg and he goes into your starting lineup, I say you're all in. You're done with that. But I have a feeling that anything but Cooper Flagg could mean another year of this. I don't agree that if you get Flagg, you do one more year of this. That's what I'm saying.
If they win 15 more games this year, they win 32 games, and that's not enough for the playoffs.
Not enough for the playoffs, but it's getting close.
Yeah, but that's no man's land, Dave. Like, that's where you don't want to be.
But you're improving, though. That's what you're trying to do. It took Oklahoma City and Houston and Detroit the same kind of improvement.
Yeah, you're talking about Cade Cunningham and SGA. You're talking about teams that actually legitimately have cornerstone pieces. The Jazz have to find one of those.
What if they do
don't
get
have
him
one.
in Flagg?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they do get Cooper Flagg, then I think we have a different conversation about what next year could look like. And we'll talk about this tonight on the show, because if you put Cooper Flagg next to Walker and next to Lowry, now you also have to hope that this offseason brings incremental improvement to Keontae and Isaiah, because if we operate off the premise that hypothetically the Jazz get lucky, their front court is stacked, but they need guard play and they need shooting. They're not just Cooper Flagg away from being good, but if they approach next year and there's no incremental resting of veterans and they bring other pieces back and they're able to add some ancillary pieces to a good front court, then, yes, you see a tangible step forward. But how good is that roster juxtaposed to Luka and LeBron and Jokic and OKC? And that's why I do think there is this possibility out there that even with Cooper Flagg, they look at a draft next year with the Boozer twins and AJ Debanta and like 5 or 6 generational pieces, and we do see this again next year. I'm not saying that's what will happen. I'm saying there's a world that that's a possibility.
Well, to circle back then to your original question, I don't think the fans are going to suddenly abandon for one more year of this if they see some sort of progress. And that doesn't even necessarily mean a number of wins, because like you said, if you win, what's the difference between winning 30 games and 17 games? Either way, you're a lottery team, only you get a worse pick. But maybe it looks a little better to the fan base to not finish dead last and be very, competitive throughout it. It's a hard one. That's a tough one, Spence. I think they're going to stay with them as long as they can. If you weren't showing any progress, if you were just a terrible team, you're not even tanking, you just stink, and there have been teams like that throughout the history of the NBA, then that's maybe where you start to lose a fan base. But at least they can see progress. The next thing you have to worry about is players that lose engagement. Like Lowry's been extremely patient. Now he also has a nice big fat contract, so that helps. But, how much more does he want to do this kind of thing? And, Colin Sexton, he's so determined and loves to play. I don't see that being an issue. But there are probably some guys that are like, let's, Clarkson, maybe Collins. I don't need another year of this. Let's move on from me.
I wonder how it resonates with their coach. I think a lot of
you heard him yesterday? Yeah. What did he say yesterday? I'm all in.
What's he going to say, Dave? Because I thought Andy asked a pretty brave question. I mean, the tension in the room was pretty palpable when Andy asked him that. When he said, "Hey, if there's a team that actually wants to win, that wants you, what would you say?"
Well, you're right. He can't say,
He's
well,
not gonna
heck
be like,
yeah, I'm
"Hey,
gone."
if they fire Mark Dagnold, I want to coach OKC tomorrow." I mean, the weird thing about this Will Hardy dynamic, and nobody ever talks about it because Will never would. I think he's been asked about it, but he brushes over it. The head coach of the Boston Celtics should be Will Hardy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
He was Ime Udoka's lead assistant. He takes the Jazz job, and like 2 weeks later, they fire Udoka because of all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes. Now, Mazzulla gets the job. They've won a championship, so they're fine in Boston, but that job should be Will's. And I often wonder, and really, if I knew him better, I would ask him off the record, like, dude, Tatum, Brown, like champion Porzingis, because we'll talk about it tonight. I think they're winning it again this year. And coaches, whether they like it or not, their win-loss record is attached to them forever, and Will has won 33% of his games. I wonder how this lands with him.
Just neither one of us know him all that well, but from what we hear out of him night to night, if he practices what he preaches, I think it's one of those things where he's reconciled that and he's moved on, and he moved on pretty quickly. That's what I believe. And I think he appreciates what Danny Ainge has done in terms of bringing him in, and I think he's understands what's going on here. And maybe he's, the Mazzulla, the Boston Celtics of 4 or 5 years from now. Who knows?
Well,
I'm not saying they're going to win a title.
No,
but
I'm just saying, like, I don't care if it's Joe Mazzulla, Will Hardy, or Timmy P as the head coach. When you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis and Derek White and Drew Holiday, and that's why my genuine hope for Will, and my hope for all of us who care about the Jazz and cover the Jazz, is we get to see what it looks like when Will Hardy has a roster of really, really good players.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Dave. They've got 2 years. They're on the clock. He's got an option next year. Then he's got an option year 5. And I'll tell you what, after 5 years, if they don't get the lottery luck that we're hoping they get, and if next year they go all in on a tank and once again the ping pong balls don't go their way, and it's 5 years of Will Hardy as the head coach where he's won 30% of his games because he doesn't have players, that question Andy asked him yesterday will be answered much differently.
You hit on something really important, though. If you want to absolutely guarantee, once again, you finished dead last year, make Timmy P your head coach.
Our guy. I wonder how Timmy would handle the stress of being the coach of the Jazz. How does Timmy handle stress?
He handles it pretty well, but he is all in on the Jazz. He and I had a little gentleman's bet, and it cost him $65.
Dave Fox?
He counted every game.
You get right with your maker. You're betting money?
I'm sorry. It's 65.
Too late.
65
Too late.
bars.
Too late. Porter, make sure you're saving this clip. Shame on you for taking Timmy's money.
No, well, he hasn't paid yet.
Okay, well, then you're not in trouble yet. Because we know our guy Timmy likes a wager from time to time.
Oh, it was a really brilliant idea the way we did this, too.
Love it. So,
anyway.
Jazz, the next exciting date for the Utah Jazz is May the 12th.
Oh, can't wait for
when we'll see if Lady Luck shines their way, and we'll talk more about the Jazz tonight. What else is spinning the beanie? Did you guys cover Rory McIlroy making history at Augusta?
How about that?
Yeah.
It was, we all sat there, watched him miss that putt and think, here we go again. A couple of them, actually. There's so many side stories to all that. Rory being paired with DeChambeau, could you have asked for a bet? And Bryson even said they did not talk the entire round, which is maybe a little unusual. I think, if there's two guys paired that are somewhat closer, have a good relationship, they may chat a little bit, but there was nothing there at all. Good for him to, the Grand Slam. There hasn't been a ton of them. Tiger is the last, but there have been a few, so that I'm happy for him in that respect. How did Tommy Freestone
Dr. Freestone back on the course? It's funny. Tony Finau has this really cool story about playing the final round in 2019 with Tiger.
Yes.
When Tiger won the Masters. And Tony said after they both hit their drive on one, they're walking down the fairway, and he walked up to him and asked him about his kids and how and Tiger didn't want to have any of it.
Nothing, yeah.
Because Tiger knew what was at stake. History at stake again. I don't know that you want the extra added distraction when you're trying to win a championship, just mucking it up with your buddy or whatever.
Well, and we all know where Roy stands on the whole live thing.
Sure.
So I don't know what Bryson was thinking he was going to get out of him.
Yeah.
If he was going to have a conversation with somebody, it wasn't going to be with him.
No. Spring football, Forever 22 game coming up on Saturday.
You told me I'm nuts, but I'm kind of excited for this game because I want to see what this offense is going to look like. I don't know, You said you don't think that Dampierre is going to play at all. I would sure.
Well, I don't know if he plays
I'd
at
love
all,
to see
but
him
they're,
get a series.
they're not going to show anything. I mean,
but okay. I just want to see him drop back and throw a ball in Rice-Eccles
you
Stadium.
can do that at spring practice. It's not like it's going to be exciting
I want to
coming
see
up for
it
the
in a
spring
little
game.
more organized situation.
You think you're going to see that on Saturday?
I hope, because I'm going to go up and watch it.
Well, I mean, I think these spring games are going the way of ultimately exhibitions. I think at some point.
I think they'll be gone.
Well, I think at some point. I don't think they'll be gone.
BYU already got rid of theirs.
I don't think they're going to be gone. I think a lot of schools will have some sort of fan celebration where you can show up and they're going to do like a Pro Bowl skills challenge, as opposed to like, because there's so
That's
much.
the same thing as being gone.
Because no, it's not. There's so much at stake. Certainly for Utah football, you do not want to risk injury at all. So some sort of fan celebration, I think, is a good idea, and I think Utah, BYU, every school should do that. But as far as the days of a spring game that's real, I think
I agree with
gone.
you. It's on its way out, but while it's still there, I think I'm going to go up and watch it and see if maybe we can see something. And you're right; they're not going to unload any great plays. I get that. I just want to see a little bit of something. So we'll see.
You just want to be reminded that football is still here.
I love football, as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
I've almost got my high school schedule done for next fall. I've got one more game to fill out, and I'm done.
What about our Braves? They going to be good next year?
They'll drop a little bit. Emerson Geilman, great quarterback and just a great kid, but he's graduated, took him to a state championship. But I think they'll be. You know what? They have a great coaching staff and a good, they've got something going on there. So I'm excited for them.
All right, before I say you lose, tonight is the final game for the Utah Hockey Club. Year one, now in the rear view. No playoffs this year, which is all right. They only had one 80-plus point season in Arizona the last decade they were there. They win tonight, they'll break 90.
Right.
So I think, the Jazz, as far as their rebuild, there are a lot of fans frustrated that it's not going better. This is a honeymoon phase for the hockey club, right? Like I didn't feel some massive letdown when the playoffs were no longer a possibility.
Well, and I believe if they win tonight, well, I'm not sure if this is absolute, but I think they might be able to keep St. Louis out of the playoffs. I don't know if you still have a soft spot in your heart for the Blues since your dad was involved there. But maybe that's motivation, something to play for. They looked awfully good last night, Spence. And how about Keller, the captain? What did he have? I think he had 2 goals and 2 assists in that game. It's been fun to get to know these guys, Krause, Keller, they're just on and on. It's just a lot of fun. And you're right. You talk about honeymoon, and they were close. They were in the same situation last year where they were a playoff team in December, January, and then everything collapsed when the whole rumor about them moving came up, and it really hurt them. But I like that they seem to be on the right track. So they're a lottery team just like the Jazz, but completely opposite ends of the lottery. So we'll see where that shapes up.
Blues on 94 points. They're the second wild card team, 1 point behind Minnesota, but only 2 ahead of Calgary. So it's still technically possible they could keep them out. So we'll see. Final game. Are you going to be in a better mood tonight when I roll?
I'm in a great mood. How am I not in a good mood?
I can tell when you're surly.
What did I do not in a good mood?
I can tell when you're surly.
Okay, I'm going to be in a great mood.
What's going on with you? You good?
Yeah, I'm great.
You sure? You have no reason to complain, Dave.
Hey, you are misreading me.
All right. Well, thanks for hopping in.
It's a beautiful day. I went to the Tulip Festival today with Kath and a couple of my daughters and grandkids.
That's why I'll never stay married. A Tulip Festival? Okay. Good for you.
Good things you do.
Good to see you. I'll see you in a couple hours.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
A Tulip Festival. Goodness. All right, 1 hour left before we get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. We welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros, 801-424-DISH. Bottom line, save a grip of money on a bunch of different things. What's going on, Ryan?
Super simple. Call us up. Guys, you're overpaying. You've seen your bill. You probably even called. We've had a couple customers. They called to try to get the bill lowered, and it doesn't work like that. The best thing to do is to call us up and take a look at the offers and promotions we have. Huge credits, prices guaranteed for the next 2 years. Guys, we'll get you the most advanced equipment out there, which gives you access to everything, all the streaming apps, all the games, everything in one place. And we'll also throw in dinner at JCW, some movie channels, and have you install it for free. Call us up today. Take advantage of the deals. Guys, more internet solutions than I've ever had. Over half a dozen different internet available options. And guys, prices are cheap, $35, $45 a month. And if you're spending $70, $80 a month for that, plus maybe you're spending, $150 to $200 and something for your TV, it's a couple $100 in cash in your pocket for a simple phone call. Call us, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The final hour of the program comes your way next on a Tuesday right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive time, Tuesday afternoon. Drive at 5 time on a Tuesday afternoon. Your commute home on this Tuesday starts right now. Happy Tuesday to you. About 68 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Have a pretty decent weather week ahead. A little chilly coming up on Thursday and Friday. Expecting a little bit of rain coming up in the mountains. But happy Tuesday to you. Hope you're having a great start to that work week. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. The 5 o'clock hour of the program tonight is brought to you by our good friends at Advanced Window Products. Advanced Window Products at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. They are online as well at advancedwindows.com. New year, new window special, which is $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. Now, here's the deal. If you are in the market right now for new windows, it's about to get really hot. If you're new to our market, you live in the desert, once kind of May and June are past, it's really, really warm. And if you are in a spot where you need new windows and you don't get that taken care of, your house will be super warm. You're going to have to jack up that air conditioning, and you're going to be hemorrhaging money while your house is not the climate that you are looking for. So if you need windows now, best thing to do is call them today at 801-850-9100 or book at advancedwindows.com. However, with the school year coming to a close, if you anticipate needing windows in a little bit, if you're going to buy or sell a home, you also call them today, because if you do that, you can lock in the special savings of $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. So even if you're not going to get windows until like September when school starts back up or whatever, get on the schedule and lock in that savings of $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. Advanced Window Products is a local Utah company with 39 years of servicing Utah since 1986. Nate Orchard, mayor of Sac Lake City, Utah football legend Jake Weber. That family is they're great people, and they're taking care of our community. They've got great rebates. They've got great warranties, and the warranties are transferable to the next homeowner. So if you're going to buy or sell a home, definitely get this done. And if you don't think it's in your budget, they've got great financing available where you can save now and pay later with payments as low as $150 a month for brand new windows. So give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Visit them online at advancedwindows.com. All right, the play-in tournament for NBA basketball starts in just about 20 minutes from right now. So we do have a little NBA basketball tonight after kind of a quiet night last night. The Hawks and the Magic will tip off on TNT at 5:30 Mountain Time, so about 20 minutes away at the Kia Center in Orlando, Florida. And then it's interesting with the play-in, it's just a few years old. This is one of the biggest play-in games that we've had to date with the Grizzlies and the Warriors at the Chase Center in San Francisco. Now, the loser of these games still has an opportunity to advance to the postseason. The winner of tonight's game, the winner of tonight's games, the 7th place versus the 8th place play-in game, the winner advances to the playoffs as the 7th seed. Okay, the loser has an opportunity to advance to the playoffs as the 8th seed, and they will play the winner of tomorrow's games. So the Heat and the Bulls play tomorrow, as do the Mavericks and the Kings. Alex Jensen potentially coaching his last game with the Dallas Mavericks before he's high speed ahead here to coach the Utah men's basketball team. So if the Kings beat the Mavericks tomorrow and the Grizzlies lose to the Warriors tonight, the Kings and the Grizzlies will play for the right to be the 8th seed and probably get swept by Oklahoma City. The winner of Hawks Magic tonight advances to the postseason as the 7th seed, and the loser will await the result for tomorrow's game where the Heat and the Bulls will play. The winner of that game will play the loser of the Eastern Conference game tonight, and then the winner of that game will advance as the 8th seed. That was very convoluted. Hopefully you followed it. So NBA playoffs for the Utah Jazz, of course, they're watching at home. And the next day that is interesting for the Utah Jazz will be May the 12th for the NBA draft lottery. As a result of the Jazz locking in the worst record in the NBA, they will have a top 5 pick. The Jazz and the Wizards, along with the Charlotte Hornets, all have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick and therefore getting the right to draft Cooper Flagg. Most of the mock drafts have a consensus top 5. Most of them. there's some variance here. Some people like the Jeremiah Fears kid from Oklahoma. Some people like Con Knippel from Duke. Kasparas Yakachonis from Illinois is a player that we've talked about. Derek Queen, the freshman out of Maryland. But chances are one of the following 5 players will be playing for the Utah Jazz coming up next year. Of course, if the Jazz get number 1, and for the first time in the 50-year history of the franchise, actually do get a little luck, and they move up in the draft to number 1, Cooper Flagg will be a Jazzman. If they fall to number 2, the consensus seems to be Dylan Harper, the freshman out of Rutgers. It's wild that Rutgers has 2 of the top 3 prospects in the draft, but they were a horrible basketball team this year and didn't come close to making the NCAA tournament. But Dylan Harper would be a very nice addition because Cooper Flagg is clearly the prize. But the Jazz have a decent front court. I mean, you could make an argument that they actually have a good front court with Lauri Markkanen, with Walker Kessler, and if what we saw from Kyle Filipowski this year is real, and that's the hard part of analyzing anyone on the Jazz this year. Like, Kyle Filipowski put up some audacious stat lines, but can you do that for a team that's serious about winning? That's the conversation. But if we operate off the hypothetical that what we saw was real and we give Kyle Filipowski the benefit of the doubt, then your front court is the area where you feel best. Now, it doesn't mean you don't want Cooper Flagg, but if you get Cooper Flagg and you march into next season with that good young front court of Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen and Cooper Flagg and Kyle Filipowski and maybe some of the other bigs, maybe Taylor Hendricks evolves a little bit after he gets healthy, you still badly need help in your backcourt. I think we saw some moments from Isaiah Collier this year, but if you want your lead guard to shoot 30% from 3, then you're telling me that you have no chance to win. Keontae George, as Will Hardy talked about yesterday, has to find a way to improve a number of different things, namely on the defensive side of the court, he is a sieve. I don't know if it's decision-making. I don't know if it's lack of focus or concentration. I don't know if he's asked to guard bigger, stronger players. I don't know what it is, but he is as bad of a defensive player as there is on the roster. And the Utah Jazz were historically bad on defense this year, just like they were a year ago. It's an area where they need to improve. So, Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, some promising moments here or there, but I'm not sure that I believe either of those two are along for the ride for the long haul as an answer to either guard position. Maybe Keontae carves out a role in pro basketball as kind of a combo scoring guard off the bench. Kind of reminds me of the way we talked about Trey Burke when Trey was here. Remember, Trey had some good moments as a rookie, but it wasn't sustainable and ended up bouncing around the NBA and having the ability to score off the bench, but never consistently enough to be a linchpin for a good team. And there's a little bit of that with Keontae, in my opinion. So, yes, you draft Cooper Flagg if you can at number 1. But if you fall to number 2, Dylan Harper's intriguing because he is a guard with good measurables and with an excellent complete skill set. He is a guy that can handle the basketball, and he is a guy that has played lead guard and is a natural playmaker in a way that Keontae certainly isn't. And he is much better and bigger and more complete than Isaiah Collier. So certainly number 1 is the goal. But if you fall to 2, Dylan Harper fills a need that actually Cooper doesn't, just on paper, even though Cooper's the better prospect. At 3 is the Ace Bailey kid, who is also more of a small forward wing. He's built a lot like Taylor. He's built a lot like Taylor Hendricks. He's kind of built like Cody, and Cody has a big offseason ahead of him. But Ace Bailey also fills a little bit of a different role as opposed to Cooper Flagg. At 4, the consensus seems to be VJ Edgecombe, who's also a guard. He was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year. He had a really, really good season. Great game down in Provo against BYU. So if you fall to 4, it feels like Edgecombe is kind of the consensus pick there. At 5, it gets a little bit interesting. Most of the mocks I read have Trey Johnson as the number 5 prospect in this draft. Now, a lot to like about Trey, who's also a wing. He's also a guard. He's 6'6". He has a 6'10" wingspan. He's about 20 points per game, 40% of his threes. That's an area where he appears to be ready as a scorer in pro basketball. He's 19 years old. And all of these players, for the most part, are very young, which makes it interesting as far as what to expect from them right away. Because as we've talked about on the show, the list of players at the age of 19, who have launched into the NBA and have been really good right away. It's a short list. And LeBron is the guy, but LeBron, of course, was a unicorn and a once-in-generational talent. Kevin Garnett, back in the day, came out of high school to play for the Timberwolves, and he was pretty good as a rookie, but it took him some time to put a little strength on and then understand the dynamics of being a pro before he became the big ticket and a superstar player. Cooper Flagg reclassified and should have been a senior in high school last year. He turned 18 like 4 months ago. So what's reasonable to expect from Cooper Flagg and the Utah Jazz if that's the marriage right away? I think that's a fair question. But NBA basketball tonight, couple play-in games. But if you're a Utah Jazz fan, the next date that is interesting to you will be May the 12th when the lottery comes our way. Spring football up on the hill rolls on. The Forever 22 game coming up on Saturday. Go to utahutes.com for tickets. Spring practice going on right now. Our buddy Josh Furlong tweeting out a bunch of takeaways. And we'll see what it looks like. I mean, I do continue to wonder what the future of spring football is in the landscape of college football. A lot of schools have already done away with it, and a lot of schools have pivoted away from an actual scrimmage. It's more of like a fan celebration and an exhibition. But if you're looking to at least just watch a little football and be outside on a Saturday, it looks to be pretty nice. Go to utahutes.com for ticket information. The New York Football Giants are meeting with Shedeur Sanders today. Not sure what that means, but the NFL draft is just about a week away, coming up next week. Not as much intrigue on the local side of things as there typically is, but of course we'll cover that throughout the course of the next 10 days or so to get you ready for the NFL draft coming up next week. So there you go. All right, we will catch a break tonight. 68 degrees and sunny most of the day. Decent weather week until Thursday and Friday. We're going to get some snow up in the mountains, so good news for all the snow bros. Utah Hockey Club with their final game of their inaugural season tonight, taking on the St. Louis Blues. And then, of course, some play-in action on the NBA side of things. The NFL draft is right around the corner. It's Jackie Robinson Day in the world of Major League Baseball. Are we going to talk some baseball on the show this summer?
I think so.
All right. We
A little
should.
bit.
We should talk a little baseball on the show this summer. I don't think – and look, I'll be honest, I'm not dialed into it just yet. We've been busy. But I do think at some point the Millers' plan will come to fruition and we'll get Major League Baseball into our market. So we'll have to see. Speaking of the Millers, I'm told that this week an announcement is imminent about the ownership transfer of our local soccer club. As the Millers, from what I understand, and I honestly don't know, I know you might not believe that, but I really don't, what this is going to look like. I do believe Ryan Smith and his group will exit stage left and no longer be a part of RSL. The Millers will essentially run the business side of things, and then the Blitzer group maintains their portion of control and will run the soccer side of things. I think that's how it's going to go, but we'll have to see as we kind of await word about whether or not Kurt Schmidt and his staff are going to be able to bring additions in prior to the transfer window closing, primary transfer window closing coming up on April the 23rd. Of course, spring football rolling on up on the hill. We'll have the Forever 22 game coming up on Saturday. And we kind of await word for the college basketball transfer portal to manifest actual players for the University of Utah. So kind of in a holding pattern in that direction. All right, I'll be on TV with Dave Fox tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. We call it Talkin' Jazz. It's our final edition of Talkin' Jazz this season. Been a fun year to be over there with Dave and Adam and the crew. So stay tuned for that. 10:35 KMYU. You going to be watching a little play-in basketball action tonight?
Oh, you know it.
You excited?
I don't miss postseason basketball.
Are you excited?
I am.
Good.
Some good matchups, I think. And although I don't really like the play-in, like I just give me 12 playoff teams rather than an extra couple play-ins.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do to make that work. 16. Hell, give me the 16. I do think it adds kind of a fun dynamic, at least for these few days, right? It gives you something besides the NBA Finals to look forward to, I guess, when you're getting through the final dog days of the season.
I will say March Madness is a great appetizer for spring pro basketball because you watch March Madness and then you realize how awesome the sport is when players care about playing. I know it sounds simplistic, but you're about to see the best players in the world start to care. So tonight's little play-in action on the NBA side of things. And after the dust settles, we'll understand exactly what the playoff matchups look like. So out of the East going on right now, we've got Orlando taking on Atlanta. And then at 8 o'clock Mountain Time, it is the Grizzlies and the Warriors. TNT has the coverage for you. All right, Porter, before we get out of here, for a Tuesday evening, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the show?
Well, and first off, yeah, you mentioned, say what you want about the NBA leading up to this, 1 through 82. No one does drama. No one does postseason basketball like the NBA. So very excited for that. Andy Larson, Craig Bolerjack will recap the Utah Jazz season that was. Neil Smith will recap the Utah Hockey Club and NHL season that was. And we'll chat with Bill Riley, catching up with the voice of the Utes. And, of course, NBA draft coverage on ESPN 700. Bill Riley will stop by the program a couple days ahead of the spring football game.
Wait a second. Hold on. Are you telling me that on the same radio show, we have Craig Bolerjack and Bill Riley?
The voice of the Utes, the voice of the Jazz, former Stanley Cup champion, and Andy Larson.
Well, and also, Bowler and Riles have both won the Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year award 3 times.
That's 6 in a row.
This is
6 total.
These are the 3-timer. I don't think anybody else is in the 3-timer club.
No,
it's a big day.
I don't think there's many even in 2-timers in the Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year. But hey, we got them both on the show.
Gotta love it. So join us for a Wednesday edition of the program. And with that, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Tim McMahon, to Easton Folster, to Belle Frazier and Dave Fox. We also played a little sound from Will Hardy's postseason presser yesterday. Now, for any of the sound you may have missed, ESPN700sports.com is the website. Our podcast is called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that's there for your consumption, well, at all times. So wherever you get your shows, please subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, give us all the stars. It actually does help out. Don't forget, TV tonight, Dave Fox, 10:35. If you've ever been curious about what I look like, you can find out on TV. He's Porter, I'm Spence saying, and I enjoy your Tuesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Wednesday edition of